Okay. Go right ahead.
Good morning, everyone, both staff and guests and board members. I'd like to welcome you to the May 2nd, 2019 meeting of the Board of Examiners for Land Surveyors, which was posted to the Board of Examiners for Land Surveyors website on April 24, 2019. We have before us an agenda, and I'd like to ask the members if they've reviewed the agenda, if they have any additions, deletions, or corrections that we need to address at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I have no changes to the agenda, but I do ask for a little flexibility in case we need to rearrange or go out of order.
Yes, sir. Have any issues that you did?
All right. I second what Jay said.
We'll effectively have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as written with the possibility of any modifications, either for guests or whatever the reason may be. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right. The next item on the agenda is a review and approval of the January 24th, 2019 minutes, which we all should have received, and I hope everyone has had a time to review those. And if there are any corrections or deletions or omissions that we need to address, we can do so at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve as submitted.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Okay, next we have
Could I
Yes, ma'am.
interrupt?
Yes, ma'am.
Just as a formality, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick roll call
Okay.
because we do
Yes,
have
ma'am.
quorum, but just to make sure that we've got everybody on the record. Mr. Jay Kaufman? Tim Lingerfeld?
here.
Jackie Dillahay has not joined us yet. And Mr. Jed McKeenan?
Here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, yes, ma'am. So we do have a quorum. At this time, I noticed that Mr. Forte is not in the room. He may be on his way. Obviously, traffic in Nashville is exciting this morning, so we'll certainly give him an opportunity to speak if and when he does arrive. The next gentleman on our list to speak with us is a Mr. Joshua Craig. If he would come forth to the podium, please.
And your iPads have his information, his most recent information on page 13, if everyone will switch. If I can get you to sign in.
Does he need a microphone up there?
Oh, thank you. I knew there was something else I needed to do. Ready as you proceed, and you.
Joshua Craig. I've been a licensed land surveyor in the state of Alabama for 14 years. Lived in Tennessee for 14 months, and I would like to have the honor. I have applied. This is my third time applying. I hope I have everything to the standard of the state of Tennessee. I went over it very carefully this time, and I would like to know what your decision is. If I'm going to be able to allowed to take the state test.
Okay, well, we were just given your updated information just moments ago, and we're just notified that it's on the iPad, so it'll take us just a few moments to go through that if we can.
I have a couple of hard copies right here if any of you would like one.
I would love to see a hard
Absolutely,
copy.
yeah, please.
We're a little old-fashioned.
Sure. Yeah.
And these are the items that were last requested per the last deferral, but we did not get them until yesterday, so you do have them on your iPads, you're correct.
Better that they have them than me. What page is this?
Starts on page 13,
Okay.
and it's under the presentation is where I have them. Good.
I've got two of the same here. Ready?
I see his letter, but that's all I'm seeing.
There you go. So his letters.
Oh, okay,
That's-
gotcha, gotcha.
Need the rest of the meeting or the rest of the week or the rest of the,
Sit down, because it'll take him a minute to go over that stuff.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jed, yeah.
Better than
He's
standing
catching
there
on.
awkwardly staring at you all.
It is.
Yeah.
It's awkward for
You're
everybody.
catching on quick. I like that. This guy's okay. He's all right. I like this guy.
Solid B minus.
Yeah.
We have the candidate review sheets from the prior submissions. Thank you.
And it's front and back.
Thank you.
So you've got
You're
everything
reading my
you've
mind.
said so far.
You're reading my
Yeah.
mind. Mr. Craig, would you mind stepping back up to the podium for me, please? Just in general, my review of the plats and descriptions, nice looking work there. It looks like you've addressed all the comments from the prior submissions. I appreciate you doing that. And especially appreciate you making the trip up here to visit with us. It means a lot. It shows a lot to your professionalism, your passion to the profession, and that you take it seriously, which is half the battle, really. But in my review, everything looks like you've addressed the issues that I've listed on the candidate review sheets from before, so I'm inclined to approve your application here. But before I do that, I do have a question for you, and really it's not just addressed to you, it's really addressed to most applicants, really. And that is that when you're going through the submission process, you know you've got the two plats to submit along with the detailed descriptions, et cetera, that need to follow the rules as listed. Your application, and you're not the only one, I'm not trying to single you out, but in this case, this situation, we went through two prior reviews. This is the third one now. It's what concerns me the most really is the applicants that submit that don't seem to do the homework ahead of time. And that's concerning to me in terms of what is it that the practice that they're going to be professing to the client, to paid clients. Are they going to pay the amount of detail that they should, that I'm seeing here? But during the first submission, the detail was quite lacking. And the second detail, even though we addressed comments saying this is what needs to be corrected, they weren't addressed on the second detail. I'm sure there's an explanation, and we'll get to that. But it's a little concerning to have an applicant 3 times through, finally what appears to be gets it right, and then they're going to go back, hopefully obtain their license, go back and go to their daily profession. Are they going to do the same amount of standard that I'm seeing here, or are they going to do to the standard of detail that I saw on the first submission that was sorely lacking? And again, this isn't just directed to you. This is to all applicants. So anybody that's listening or watching, this is what I'm concerned about, is that on the initial application, the initial submission of the plats, the concern to the detail of standard that we're expecting as professionals, that the public upholds us to be at, isn't there. And that once they go back to the daily service of providing that service to the public, at what level are they going to be at? That's my concern. I was wondering if you could address that.
Well, I relied primarily on Mr. Joe Ayler's advice. Piece of the state code, which was my mistake. I had a lot of corners down there, but I grew up.
Can I stop you right there?
Yes, sir.
That concerns me, what you just said there. In that, and I'm not disagreeing with the statement that there's different rules and laws between the states. I myself, Tim, Jackie as well, are licensed in multiple states. We're aware of that. But as a professional, you're expected to uphold to the standard of the state that you're applying to. In this case, Tennessee. I can't imagine myself applying to, pick a state, Minnesota, submitting to the application not to the standards of that particular state. You as a professional, you're already licensed in Alabama. It could be other states, I'm not aware. You know that you're expected to uphold to that specific state regulation. You know that if you survey in another state, you're expected to uphold to that state's standards. But we didn't see that on the first or second submission. That concerns me. That's my point. Again, this is not directly at you, though we're addressing you at this time. This is to all applicants. But that's my concern. What I need to hear from you right now is that I can leave this room later in the day with the confidence that you understand the standards that this state expects and every other state that you apply to in the future to those standards when you're serving the public. That's what I need to know.
I do understand that each state has its own laws. That was my.
There you go. It's got to be red. It's not picking up your voice.
Louder is really what
There you
we're
go.
getting.
And that was my mistake. I do not aim to make it again.
You understand that if you do obtain a Tennessee license, it's your stamp, your signature, your responsibility.
Yes.
Not someone else's,
Not
not your
someone
mentors,
else's.
not someone you used to work for. Your responsibility
I
completely.
completely understand that.
And you take on that responsibility and you accept and understand that
I do.
to the standards that Tennessee holds.
I will.
That we hold every other surveyor in this state.
I
I
will.
want to make sure you understand that.
I do understand that.
Okay.
Well, on the heels of what Mr. Kaufman has said, Mr. Craig, and what you have said, I certainly agree with what Mr. Kaufman has said, not only to you, but to other applicants. But the concern I have is submission number 1, by what you have just said, was clearly a demonstration from Mr. Joe Ayler. And that really concerns me, because the final submission here, number 3, in my review, is still pretty much a submission from Mr. Ayler. Typically speaking, we see on these documents at least a brief sentence or two that stipulates that you had done this work under this surveyor's supervision. Now, he does make a statement here that it says that this was prepared under my direct supervision, but he's not speaking, that's pretty much a typical statement for most plats. He is not speaking to the fact that you in fact did this work. You know, from my review, the work is in order, but nowhere on here does it say that you did it while working for him. It just says that somebody did this under his direct supervision. It does not specifically address you, and part of the application process, as far as I'm concerned, is for us to determine that you have done the work under someone else's tutelage, and that you, as Mr. Kaufman has very aptly said, have done the review and made sure that everything is appropriate in order to submit to this board for review.
I did the work, and we both reviewed it, and he approved it.
Well, and again, I'm going to speak to other applicants, not directly, so much directly to you, but, you know, this is what I like to see on these documents, and we very typically see on these documents that the licensee is addressing the individual applicant, that they did do the work, and it is the applicant's work product under the review of the licensee, and that's very important.
To what extent, you said you did do the work here. Can you give just brief detail to what extent of the work that we're looking at here was done by you? You did the field work as well?
I did the field work on Camp Ravine Road, and I drew it in
And the
mathematical calculations. I didn't go in the field on that one, but I took our survey data at work and compiled the plat with that.
Courthouse research, all that? Yes. Okay. How long have you been licensed in Alabama? 12 years. 12 years. Anywhere else? All right, Mr. Craig, from what I saw today, I'm inclined to approve your application here. The work is much improved. Obviously, you did sit down and address line by line to the minimum standards. I wish you had done that on the first one. Again, to every applicant, do it on the first time. It makes it a whole lot easier for everybody. Probably what concerned me more really was the second time. Still wasn't addressed. I didn't ask you for an explanation of that. If you want to offer one, that'd be fine. Come on, attorney.
He's our attorney also.
Yeah. I understand.
Yeah.
Here's what I would say, Mr. Craig. It's never fun to take a tongue lashing, but I would tell you that these two gentlemen care about their profession. If you have a question or need help, you could probably call them and they would be willing to help you.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to, but you may want to take advantage of that, especially being new to Tennessee.
I'm a member of ASPLS, and I'd also like to become a member of TAPS.
Probably a good idea.
Speak to the man in the back. He can take care of you there.
President back there, we'd love to have you do that. But I tell you, Mr. Craig, I'm going to approve your application, and it takes 2 approvals to do that. So you will be allowed to take our examination. And not to reiterate anything, but I highly encourage you to take to heart what we've tried to share with you today. Again, we're not specifically focusing on you, because I can assure you the applications that we see, probably 70 to 80% of them, we could say the same exact words to each and every one, whether they were standing here or on the telephone or whatever. And we do in our review. This is not a beat somebody up review. It's a review to make sure, at least at the time of your examination, we have some assurance that you have at least read and tried to apply the standards of practice for the state of Tennessee, so that you have that foundation, because once you become licensed, there are no excuses at that point in time. It's just hard facts. So that's why we say that to you. thank you very much for taking your time to come and appear before us. As Mr. Kaufman said, it does show that you do care, and we greatly appreciate that. And we wish you the best in taking and passing our examination.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman, Mr. Lingerfeld, and Mr. Dillon Hay.
You've got my card? Okay.
Hey, down there? Come on
Sometimes
now.
incognito's good, Jed.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, we're now transitioning for a moment. So we're now ready to speak to Mr. Joshua Miller, if he would address us.
And if I could interrupt, so Mr. Miller's items, if you do need to look at them, they are not on your presentation. They're on the applications, which is a separate saved document. He's the first one there. It was just bulky, so we separated it until we knew who was appearing before the board and who was not. And he starts, I think he's the very first one, if you see it.
Got a touch. I'm technologically. Oh, there it showed up after I touched something else.
It's that one.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Multitask. I love this guy.
I know you do.
Yeah. I love this guy. Okay, Mr. Miller, you've got the floor.
All right, my name's Josh Miller. I'm from Smiths Grove, Kentucky. I'm a licensed surveyor there since 2010. This thing went out on me. I've been driving to Tennessee for probably a year, a little over a year, 6 months, something to a year, somewhere in there. I'm working with Patrick Smith at L.I. Smith at currently, and we just sold our house, so we're trying to get moved down here and get settled into Tennessee if possible. And of course, I sent you guys my application, so hopefully I can get licensed here as well. And you guys I tried to get my stuff in quickly, and I know I had to make a revision on my plat, send it back to you, but hopefully in enough time to where to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, Mr. Miller, I'm going to go first this time. I noticed in reviewing your application that there was a disciplinary action in, I believe, in the state of Kentucky between you and the board. And I would really like you to address that to us, if you would.
Okay. Yeah, that was a. Jamie? Did I send a letter out for that? Okay. If you've read the letter, I won't try to recreate the whole scene, but I took on a person that had been disciplined in Kentucky, and we tried to set that up in a manner to where it didn't appear as if this guy was Doyle Harding, Mr. Doyle Harding, was performing his own surveying, but in the county that he came from, most people knew him. He'd been surveying for, I don't know how long, 20, 30 years maybe. And so it was hard to break that pattern of people seeing him out and thinking, well, he's surveying. And then the issue that I was disciplined on, first of all, I think the discipline was a good thing for me. I think it's a good thing for everybody. It's like being a child, so to speak, growing up. If you never get any discipline, you never respect anything, or you never change your way of thinking, you never do anything differently. You just cruise through and everything's great. And I'm afraid that may happen more than it should. But anyway, I took this person on, and we formed contracts so people would understand that, hey, this is, if someone called him, he would refer them to me. We'd do contracts, and we drove to the majority of the things that he'd done. Probably, I wouldn't say all, but probably 85%. We would get in the car, drive around the sites just to make sure, because it was a little nerve-wracking knowing that he had surrendered his license. So anyway, it was a bad choice altogether. Just lessons learned. You live and learn, you grow. But someone down the street called him and said, hey, can you come just flag my corners? And of course he called and said, hey, somebody down the road from me, it's in his subdivision, said, can you come flag my corners? And I said, sure. It was a mother and a daughter, and they had 2 lots, like a couple $100 a piece. Go flag them, And like I said, for most things we did contracts on, and in that situation, I didn't. I said, just go down the road and do it. Of course, he had the plat, so I didn't retain it, which was a mistake. I should treat that project the same as any state boundary, and I didn't. And to this day now, I've made changes in the workplace that I'm at now, as far as instituting DocuSign on all of our projects, so that there's always paperwork, no miscommunication. Everybody knows what they're getting. Everybody's clear. And it's actually a good way for cash flow, so it works out good. But anyway, so I've learned from this, but I didn't do any contracts. I drove around it and looked at the PENS flag, and that's the extent of what I did. So the board calls and says, we need to talk to you. They show up, ask me about it, and I do a lot of projects, so the name didn't ring a bell. So, I was like, oh no. Well, I had an invoice, and that was all I had. So, learned my lesson. DocuSign, contracts on everything, and I actually advise people now, don't do line marking. Don't even do it. Where I'm at now, if somebody calls and says something about a boundary or a line marking, I advise the people in my office to no, don't do that. Anyway, so I think that's the main thing. When you get disciplined, you have to grow and develop, learn, get better.
Did this all transpire?
That was 2000. I don't know the exact date of the survey, but I think it was 2014. Pretty sure that happened. And I actually went back to work with American Engineers shortly.
What was the results of the disciplinary action? Was there a fine? Was there a suspension?
I got fined and suspended.
How long was the suspension?
3 months. Yeah.
Had to do during those 3 months PDHs, courses, submit plats, anything like that?
I think I had to do some CEs, yeah. Right. I think it was an ethics course. Did an online ethics course. So
after the 3 months, your license was returned to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I didn't have to do any. There was no probationary period, and when I met with those guys, they said, we don't see anything wrong with your work. It was just, you didn't things in the right manner, and I didn't. I didn't speak to the owner of the property. But I went back later on. The whole issue was she thought she was supposed to get a plat. And, of course, it was a recorded subdivision. We just went around and found her corners for her and flagged it up to sale. But I went back, and it was past when I went back, it was past a reasonable time to do it. But I went back and did a boundary on her lot and her daughter's lot, and a full boundary, and gave them plats. And So
Other disciplinary action since then?
the only other thing that I did is when I went to American Engineers after that period of time, I renewed my license, but I didn't renew my business permit or my business thing. I forgot. I did because I wasn't running the business, and someone called and I don't know if it was a past client or whatever, but people would call and say, "Hey, can you come do this?" And my employer was aware. I told him, "Hey, I'm gonna go do this," because I took a little bit of a pay cut coming from my own business to doing that, and I said, "I'm gonna do these little projects here and there on the side," and of course they said that's fine.
The business
But-
license, was that just a local city or county business license?
No, that was my
Kentucky.
through
Did
Kentucky.
they do that?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, through Kentucky.
Okay.
I didn't renew the permit, so I did a survey. It was a previous survey that I'd already done. They wanted a new division, so I was like, well, I hate for you to have to hire this all new or whatever. So I did a division on a previous survey in Mumfordville, Kentucky, and I left the company name on there. So I think maybe that was the fine. I paid $1,000, and I think that was the $1,000, and then the suspension was the ordeal that I had already explained.
So these are two separate.
It's happened all around in the same.
It's all in the same consent.
It's all in the same
It's
little
all in
time.
consent order.
It snowballed on me right
Yes,
there.
I got you.
I let things go south there for a little short time. So.
Well, first of all, Mr. Miller, I'd like to thank you for coming to appear before us and allowing us to address that situation. We'll look at the plats and so forth here in a moment. Secondly, the thing I want to say to you is I appreciate your sincereness about the discipline, because I myself feel the same way as what you said, that discipline is not always a bad thing. It can be a good thing. And the example I use is if someone in my neighborhood gets disciplined for doing X, then it raises my attention to see, well, maybe I'm doing X as well, and maybe I need to do something. So in that regard, discipline, it can be very positive. It's unfortunate that someone has to take the blunt of it for that regard, but it can be very positive to others in the profession. Now I guess I'm going to get on my passionate soapbox for just a moment, and it's nothing that you've not said, but what I'm going to say to you is being a licensee is a privilege, and that privilege brings along responsibilities. And I think now, through the course of these things over the last several years, you're beginning to better appreciate what these responsibilities are professionally. And albeit that, we all should help our fellow man, our friends, our neighbors, and so forth, the good Christian attitude, and that's a wonderful thing that you were trying to do for this gentleman. But professionally speaking, it's not one size fits all. But I think you've learned that. And it has been a challenging and an expensive and an enduring lesson that you've went through. So that's very important. And I, again, as Mr. Kaufman said earlier, some of the things that we say here are for folks that watch our videos so that they can see that what the board's passion and direction on some of these things are. And hopefully that will help somebody that views this if they're not currently here. And I appreciate your sincerity for this, your attendance, and we're certainly going to review this, and we'll let you know our decision here shortly.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Kaufman,
I'm good.
you have anything? Jed,
good,
you have
thank
anything? You can tell him to sit down, Jed.
Yeah, you can sit down. I think you covered it correctly. Your story lines up with what you put in here. You're not lying to us. That's what matters. So, thank you.
Did you guys think?
Some of the documents don't scroll quite fast to pick up. You may be noticing on your iPads. We do have that you all have reviewed it already and reviewed the plat. So I don't know if you're comfortable going with your information.
Have the previous?
They're on your iPad. So, for example, yours, Tim, is
trying to
on
find them.
page 2 is yours. You dated it
okay.
March 28th. So I think this was the issue you wanted to discuss.
Primarily,
as
yes,
opposed to the documents, if you're good with accepting that.
Are these new plats that you've submitted now different than the others, or are they the same ones as the others?
It should be different, I think.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking. Because I know the one I addressed previously in the second review had meander points on it, and I addressed those in my comments.
On your March one, Tim, you approved him based on the plats. So you, I think on March 28th, did see his legal description changed, and,
Trying to get to it just keeps,
oh, I know. We're not sure why, both Jamie and I are puzzled, so I
I'm not
apologize.
technologically advanced, but it's slower than I am, and that's bad.
Yeah, no.
Normally it works great.
Yeah. It's the first time it's ever been this slow. But I think it's because Jed touched mine. I don't know.
True. I was trying to see if there was an update or something that happened.
And Tim's had approved it, so I'm comfortable that we have one approval from the plat. So Jay, you would need to be that second. If yours is opening up and you want to take a look at the revised, then we're good, because we would have two.
Spoke too soon.
Mine's having a few issues, but it does catch up, so.
Mr. Miller, just for your edification, I had approved yours on March the 28th. However, I did specifically mention one thing that I feel like that you should know, is that you have one plat on here that speaks to county road meander points, and there's no identification of what type of monumentation that you put there, which implies to me that you didn't put any. By the way I read the map, I could be incorrect, but that's a point that I want to make. If it's a new boundary survey, all points need to be monumented.
Step up there real quick. I got one brief question for you. Everything looks fine. The survey examples I'm looking at, in terms of the reference to Grid North, label Tennessee State Plain Corners Grid North, I'm assuming, and it's also a question, I'm assuming you use GPS in your methods to establish that. Is that right?
Yeah, that's, that's actually, it's a survey. It's a survey I did and I don't want to put my foot in my mouth, but it's a survey I did in Kentucky, and I put that on there just for standards.
Yeah, to
I
make
guess.
the standards, and I understand.
Yeah, but
that.
it would have been a GPS.
It would have been GPS.
If that's the case, it would have been GPS survey.
Okay, and the reason I asked that question is that when we're using GPS on our plats, there's also a certification that we add to it in terms of the equipment we use, what reference we use for the base station, any RMS values, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm missing that certification on the plats. I just don't see it. Number one, that's something I would have addressed as a comment here towards your plats. I want to make sure you were aware of that.
That's what we currently do.
Similar to the previous gentleman that was up here, I want to make sure that you're upheld to the standards that we all rely on, and the public, insists that we follow.
We've actually started charting those out.
Okay.
To make them clear on the plat. So
I want to make sure.
I am aware of them. I may have used my old note on there, GPS note.
In reference to the GPS at all, other than you established Grid North, that's why I wanted to see how you established
which
it.
plat?
I think that's
The one with the meander points, Catherine Ross subdivision.
Oh, this was done. That's why. Well, actually,
Just say state blank coordinates and Grid North on your north. The point being, I'm not trying to hold you up on this, but the point being, I want to make sure you were aware of that as a part of our standards on any survey that uses GPS.
yes, sir.
Yeah, that's, we're running that question a lot with our current licensees about what needs to go on a plat if GPS is utilized.
Yeah.
And we've focused on that greatly with everybody, so.
Recently make a change in some of that,
Yes, sir.
and we started implementing that at L.S. Smith as far
The
as we just charted it
the
out.
ultimate purpose is if you do something today and you utilize GPS in that survey, 10 years from now, can somebody retrace that
Right.
and get back to where you were at? That's the ultimate purpose of the whole deal.
Yes.
And if they can do that, then what we've got works.
Yep.
But the failure to give them that creates problems in the future.
Right.
So, again, as I told the other gentleman, you're approved, and good luck to you in taking the examination.
Thank you.
And we hope that through all these things that you've went through, that you'll become a very.
Man, thank you.
Thank you very much.
If I could interrupt us, we'd need a second Land Surveyor Board member approving him.
Yep.
You got it. Thank you.
Okay, I do not see Mr. Forte or Mr. Thompson, either one here.
You're welcome then to decide. We can do the TAPS update if you would like. And I did not put on your iPads the questions that they had, but I'm sure you've got them and we can go over them, or we can go ahead and review, leave maybe Mr. Forte toward the end. Mr. Thompson till the end, just in case he does get here, because we thought he was coming.
Sideways, that's all it
Just
is.
turn my head sideways, not worry about it. Mr. Winter, would you like to come forth and go ahead and do your thing, or we'll let you decide if you want to do something different?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Let Tim answer that one.
And the board was emailed all of these questions. What you were not sent was, I believe, number 5. That's not relevant necessarily. I think I was able to respond. This would be someone that hasn't paid for the session that they were allowed to take. That wouldn't be the board's problem or decision. It'd be a business decision for that provider to decide to not let them attend, collect the money. So that's nothing that we would get involved with. That's a business thing.
Is that
Yeah.
question 5? Is that the
Yes.
one? Okay.
And so I took that off on the emails that I sent you, because that isn't an internal office problem or the board's problem. So hopefully the providers can make a business decision on how to collect before they.
That was the one that I just said a minute ago that was probably not going to be the easy one, because I was curious, and you kind of answered it in
I
the
did on the email.
My question originally was, do you guys, if you audit somebody, do you take the certificates and then do you verify that they actually took the classes or not? She clarified that for me. So we had a hypothetical situation at our conference that we're probably going to change the way we're doing our sheets.
I understand.
We're going to discuss that. Again, my name is John Winter, Knoxville, Tennessee, current president of TAPS, Tennessee Association of Professional Surveyors. Appreciate you guys letting me sneak in. After that last meeting, I kept saying I was going to email, so I can get on the agenda and not have you guys have to make it. But I guess I'm stealing Mario's time, so that's okay, I guess. First question, this kind of came up in our office regarding route surveys. You go and do a route survey essentially for a utility going in. You find all the front corners. You determine whether this appears to be the right-of-way, essentially. Utility comes back, first thing they do is they lay their pipe in the standard utility and drainage easement, rip all those pins out. The question that I have is, as a surveyor, are we allowed to reset those? I mean, we didn't do a boundary. We're not saying that's officially the corners. But in some instances, that's 3 miles of potential. Make that determination on those pins. Basically, I feel like we should probably put them back in, whether they're right or wrong. Obviously, we couldn't put a cap on it if it's a capped pin. And then the next surveyor can determine whether that was truly the correct. I always hate to see long stretches of evidence get ripped out and gone. You know, so what?
My quick initial thought would be that would be a contractual issue in the scope of services. That's my first thought off the top of my head. Property corners get damaged, they get ripped out for whatever reason, whether it's construction or whatever happens. I would think initially in the scope of services to the contract of the services that you're going to provide, that be an option, replacing of pins. My second point on this would be, if you were to take that on, if the surveyor were to take that on, the scope to include replacing of the pins, that the surveyor would understand that they're placing those pins as if he were doing a boundary survey, and if he needs to perform the full boundary survey to establish those pins, that be part of the process. I would suggest that it would be. That's up to the surveyor individually, how he goes about that. Is he obligated to replace the pin? I don't know that he is offhand. I don't know that he is. Not that I'm aware of, offhand. So I don't know if that answers the question or not.
Well, this is what kind of brought it up, because we were talking about it. It's like, well, we were sitting there talking to the meeting, and we're just like, we can't really set a pin that we didn't do the boundary on. You know, and the utility companies aren't going to pay us to do boundary surveys for 47 properties down the road. So it almost feels like we're kind of caught in that. They all got ripped out.
There's another way to look at it. If I were a property owner along this route survey. And as a product of the construction of pipeline, whatever it is, my front corners got ripped out that were placed by a surveyor that I paid for. Those are, quote unquote, my pins. I might want those pins put back in.
I believe we have done that before.
And I can see
The
that.
client will come back and say they want their pins reset. And we're like, well,
Absolutely.
we've got to do the boundary to put the pins in.
Absolutely.
Set 'em.
Absolutely.
So-
And so I would think that, again, and there should be no cost to the property owner for that happening. So I would think that, again, in the scope that be defined, and that the costs associated be incorporated into the scope provided to the utility client or construction client, whoever it is, the client. That's my off-the-cuff response. You have a better response, Tim?
I never have a better response than what you have, Jay, but that doesn't mean I won't say something, but. Well, it's sort of a two-edged sword.
It is.
If the utility was off of the right-of-way, the work would be done differently. If it's within the right-of-way, it's another subject. Now, we run into the same thing in our area as far as a utility or whatever it may be tearing corners out. Now, if we have done a route survey where we've located a lot of, I'm going to call them potential property corners, and we have made a map to show where those are, a lot of times the property owner will contact the utility, or first off, they'll contact whoever's doing the installation and say, hey, look, you guys dug out my property corners and I need you to come back. Well, then that goes to the utility. And if we've done the route survey, the utility then will ask us to go back to parcel number 22 and put the two front rods in that we found, put them back where we found them. And by having control and so forth, it's not a big issue. But we make sure that we have someone sign a document that says we simply replaced what we found, that we make no verification for any boundary survey unless we are requested to do so.
Okay.
So that's kind of the way we handle that. And that's not much different than what Jay said, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, it's really from both answers, I'm kind of getting that it is that gray area that
It is.
we started thinking, we've done it a couple times, and some we've had to do a whole boundary survey, or sometimes, we do a base map, and here's the pin we found.
Right.
I don't know if it is 100% on that, right? And that came up, it's like, well, that's setting a pin. So, where
Take on the
where
full
does that go?
responsibility of that pin
Where does
just
that go
set?
into?
Absolutely
Right?
you do.
So, okay.
And that's why that we have the form that we get people to sign, primarily for liability issues, but it's also communication. And, so many things that we get involved in as surveyors is because we don't communicate properly.
The next one is very easy. I was looking through the PDH approved list from, I guess, most recent one after PDHs that got approved. And I don't remember seeing anything in there about Boy Scouts, but I didn't know. That's just a curiosity question for me. If someone was merit badge for the Boy Scouts, can they get any credit for that?
Yes, they can.
Can they? Okay.
I have done those classes many times at ETSU. I've never submitted for anything like that. Of course, typically I don't need them myself. So, but yeah, if someone needed to get them, they could certainly submit because the Boy Scouts have a format for that class. And if you've ever done one, it's really good. It's really
involved
good.
from what
Yeah,
I've read on it.
Yeah,
So
it's quite interesting. It's good, and the kids can have fun with it. So yeah, I think something like that would definitely because I mean that in a nutshell is one of the groups of people that we need to be speaking to for our future.
That's part of why I asked, because
Right.
it's a little bit of a marketing thing, because I want
Yes.
to be able to tell people, hey, if you put on one of these things, you can get PDHs.
Right.
Everybody's always looking for PDHs, but if it helps get our profession out in front of more people, kids, parents that bring them are going to learn more about surveying and why they need them. I think that's a good thing. The next one was, and this is just, we had a guy come in our office asking, hey, I'll be willing to give some soil science seminar for PDHs if surveyors wanted it. And I told our boss, I said, I don't think we can get that. And I couldn't remember. Number 3 is soil science still covered under this board? I think it used to be, maybe a long time ago.
Well, I think the best way to answer that, and I really should let Miss Roxanne answer it, but when you said,
Oh, my.
thank you, Jed. Go ahead, Miss Roxanne.
We need a 10-minute
Jed does not want me to talk. Go ahead, Miss Roxanne. It is fine. I love this guy.
I'm happy to turn it back to you, but you're correct. It's a separate statute all of itself, but I think that when you open the laws, they're kind of together. Yeah.
What-
Yeah.
What I was going to say, with Jed's permission, was that when the soil scientist law came into effect, and I'm an old guy, I just happen to remember this, Jed, and when it came into effect, they needed somebody to basically manage it, okay? And it was chosen at that time for Donna Mulder to manage soil scientist, which the assumption came about that it was under the Board of Examiners. It really wasn't. It was just simply another, they don't have a board. They don't have enough folks, so they don't really have a board. They have a committee, I believe it is, isn't it?
Yes, and so it's a commissioner-run program. It is one of my programs, but the assistant commissioner or designee is the one that reviews complaints, licensing issues, but we don't have an actual group right now that meets because there just hasn't been a need and it hasn't been appointed to have these members. But their statute does say that you could have a soil scientists committee or group.
The last time I heard, I think there was like 90 licensed in the state or something. There's not very many.
It's not many.
It's not many.
Sounds about
It's a
right.
very,
Maybe
very
even
small
less.
number.
More than I thought there would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think 2016 is the last one that we've issued a new license to, so it isn't a big program.
Well, that pretty much answers the part about the PDHs, because it's not reviewed by this board, it's not something that can be approved by this board.
Right.
He offered, and I was asked to find out, was all it was. The fifth one was about the seminar thing. We're going to deal with that offline on our own as best we can. And the last part I left in my chair, hang on one second.
And that brochure is on your iPads on page 23 and 24 under the presentation, if you, thank you, appreciate this.
And this is a possible future TAPS 5 paths brochure. Again, you got it sent to you, and I brought it in a fold-up format so you can kind of see how it is. I've taken a rough stab at it, and have to take it to the board in June and see what they feel about it if they want to move forward. We discussed this last time, and you guys made clear that you can't either approve or whatever, any kind of brochure, because you have to stick straight with the laws. Totally understand that. This is more just giving it to y'all as an informational thing. Basically, I've cut and pasted that stuff right out of the regs. It's supposed to be just a quick answer because Jay and I talked beforehand. It's really hard to kind of dig through the pages to get to it if somebody wants a quick answer. That kind of sums it up. The blank part on the back, I thought I'll put that in a table format as far as the education that you get, how many additional classes you need, how many years of experience, blah, blah, blah. And then the other half maybe lists the schools in the state that provide education for a 2-year or 4-year license. Again, that's informational. You don't have to reply or anything on that.
Ray, this is a fantastic resource.
I think it'll meet the needs of a couple of people that had asked for it. But again, there's like on all 3 pages or whatever, or 3 sides is saying Tennessee Code annotated, blah, 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 blah. This is what you need.
This is a great thing for TAPS to take on. This is a great resource of information to its members, and if they're not members or prospective surveyors, it's a great resource. I appreciate you doing that. I appreciate TAPS taking this on. You did say this is just straight cut and paste. It appears to be cut and paste.
I didn't want to change anything.
Right.
Because
the one thing I would ask, I think you mentioned the plan for that blank space was to create kind of a tabled area, if yes, then this, if no, then this. Perhaps if you could just, shoot it our way just to review in case, so we could kind of look at it. Yeah, that looks right. That looks right. Ooh, yeah, here's something.
that's why, again, it's not.
Because the cut and paste
get
is black and
approval.
white. I mean, that's
But
straight
if y'all
from the book,
see something
but-
you think should be added that might
Right.
might be beneficial, that way
Right.
it's not an official thing from y'all. But
Yeah, as far as the paths, I think you got it. Obviously, it's just straight from the rules. So
it's something I hope is that the university or the schools that provide the education can maybe have these to potential students and say, here's your options.
absolutely.
Come here, get 2-year. Go to ETSU, get 4-year.
Absolutely.
Whatever. Yeah, or out of the high school, whatever it's going to be required.
The most important thing that I see missing, and technically no one would ever really notice that, is the FS examination can now be taken at any time after high school
I
graduation.
could put that under the education.
I feel like that's a very valuable thing for young folks to know. Now, they obviously may not be successful that quickly taking it, but it's very important.
Well, again, because, a lot of the terms of the licensure deem on the clock. When you pass that FS exam, the earlier you pass that FS exam, the better in terms of obtaining your license, the sooner you have a chance. So yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think that needs to be added in there, that, at any time you can take that FS. Absolutely.
This is a good resource to pass out at career fairs or wherever.
Well, that's
you're
kind of what we're
gonna
thinking about
pass
too.
it.
Our company has done that some. We've gone to career fairs and kids are asking, and you'll hand out 100 and 95 of them probably wind up in the trash, but there might be 5 kids that, well, that's kind of interesting.
In discussion, it's really hard to answer the question because there's 5 paths and each one has its own distinct path. So much easier just to go give them a brief answer and say, hey, study this over. Give me a call if you have any questions.
Hopefully, I can put a link, at least where they can type in to see the TAPS video. I don't know if you guys saw that if you attended the conference, but I thought that,
See that.
came out
Outstanding.
really, really good.
Outstanding.
And I believe we've added it to our website, or at least added the link to yours to get to it, so
Yeah.
it was great.
All right. There is discussion also. I thought it went over so well. We discussed it at the conference. Why you need a surveyor. Not only potential people going into surveying, but why would I even need a surveyor? I thought, boy, they need to look at this video for that. So I'm hoping that's
Project for TAPS to take on.
The whole YouTube world is huge with younger folks.
Yeah.
So, they're looking at all things all the time. That's you're younger folks.
He did.
I knew it was coming. Yeah, I knew there would be a reference to me at some point.
It's all good, Jed.
John, I'm sure you'll handle this, but I don't know if you're going to, all the things that Tim and Jay said to include on the back page may not fit. I'm sure you can modify as you needed, but are you going to put somebody's,
I could put the.
just out of curiosity.
I could put TAPS, and I could maybe even put the board contact if
Yeah.
they want to go right to that.
Probably
right
not
to
a
the
bad
source.
idea.
Again, this is kind of just a rough, and obviously if the TAPS board says they want to do it, it'll be much better than me knocking it out on a little printer. It'll be a pusher than that, but no money
great.
is involved. So
It's great. We appreciate all your efforts, and hopefully the organization will take it on and embellish it a little bit, and we'll get them out there. You get me some, I'll see to it ETSU gets them.
yeah, hopefully in June we'll discuss it and maybe get somebody that's better at refining that kind.
great first stab.
I've got. Do you guys have anything for me that you concerns with TAPS or anything that you want?
My question was going to be, is there anything in TAPS that needs to come in front of the board? Any questions or concerns or anything addressed? Is there anything that TAPS is addressing now that we need to be aware of?
Not that I know of. I think in the June meeting, we're going to discuss seriously about the right-of-way law. There's going to be the discussion on that.
Hope that we'll be able to take a break here in a moment, and I would like to ask you to stay for at least through our legislative update, if you would. I think there's some interesting things there that you... All right, everyone, we'll take about a 5-minute break here. We'll reconvene at 10:20.
Hey, Tim,
Yes, sir.
I saw on here on the agenda that we can.
Darn attorneys.
Okay, we are now back from our short break, and we are to the education report. Ms. Roxanne.
Thank you. And the education report starts on page 26. Let you questions. I believe everything there has been approved by our members that review these.
Is that the same that was sent to us?
Yes.
No differences?
Yes, there's no difference.
Is there any discussion of the items in the education report?
I have no discussion. They all look fine.
Okay. If there's no discussion, then we'll entertain a motion.
So moved for approval?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the education report. Anything else? If not, call for the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Legal report. Miss Ashley, our newlywed, and I can't remember what, Van Klein?
Van Klein, you got it.
Van Klein, all
Miss
right.
Van Klein.
You still
Okay.
have your old last name on here, just FYI.
Yes. She just told us today she's changing, so it's really, really current. We're going to get that
Married
done for
April
the next meeting.
14th.
Oh, hey, there you go. Congratulations.
Thank you. All right, our first item on the legal report is complaint number 2018-0844-4431. This is a person with no disciplinary history. This was a consumer complaint alleging that the respondent had removed stakes during a land survey and was negligent in performing the survey. In response, the respondent indicated that the consumer changed the scope of work over the course of the project, which created some confusion between the parties. He denied any intentional misconduct and indicated he tried to provide the consumer with the professional services that she was expecting. We did send this case out for an investigation and review. The reviewer found no violations of the rules or laws, no incompetence, no conflict of interest, and no misconduct. The reviewer, however, did note that he believed the misunderstanding between the parties could have been avoided if there had been a written agreement or contract. So legal's recommendation here is to close.
Okay, based on what I read and what I heard you say, it's sort of a he said, she said for the most part, with no apparent damages anywhere.
You know, kind of alluding to what one of the gentlemen that was before us earlier made the comment that I should have had a contract or a letter of agreement or a letter of understanding, whatever you want to call it. And boy, isn't that the truth. And you know, it seems like almost every time we have one of these meetings, the same issue comes up. We should have had a contract. In fact, I think it might be at least one state, if not another, that mandates contracts in surveying business. I think California does, I believe. There may be others. But again, you know, this just reiterates the same. I don't see any issues with it. I agree with the recommendation from staff.
Same.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to go with staff's recommendation to close. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
The next item on the legal report is complaint number 2019-010571. This is someone who does not have a disciplinary history. This was another consumer complaint. This one alleged that the respondent's survey was in error because it did not match the county tax map records. In response, the respondent indicated the tax office had an error in their mapping. The respondent also provided a copy of a letter from the county tax office stating that the error in mapping was due to the tax office placing the parcel in the wrong location. This case was sent for an investigation and review. The reviewer found no violations of the laws or rules, no incompetence, no conflict of interest, and no misconduct. So legal would recommend closing.
Other Achilles heel in our industry, property assessors maps. They typically do have a disclaimer on them that's not where the property lines are. They're for pictorial purposes only, et cetera, but the consumer does not read that because they see the picture and they see their house and their property line and the line runs through the neighbor's garage and all this type of thing. Believe it or not, the property assessors of the state of Tennessee provide a lot of work for surveyors because of incorrect mapping. I think that's clean across the state. I really do. Okay, any discussion? If not, we're ready for a motion on this.
Yeah, the only point I want to make is that this is a great example of why we have the investigators to go through this stuff. I mean, I could see on the surface, I would want to see this as well, you know, what's going on, but obviously the investigator provided that service already, found no issues. I agree with staff and the recommendation to close and make that motion.
Concur. I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Our last item on the legal report this morning is a represent that will be presented by Ms. Erica Smith.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for having me. This complaint number is 2015-021-5801. And when this was originally presented, the expert that provided us with findings didn't have the respondent's response to consider, just the complainant side of the story. And the fact that the respondent did not respond to defend his actions was a big part of why I think that expert felt like there was an indication of incompetence because he wasn't defending his actions and kind of noted just a lack of general surveying knowledge without really specifically analyzing why he came to that conclusion. And that expert is no longer providing services to our department, so I couldn't use that any of his findings anyways if we were to go to a formal hearing and go after this person's license for revocation. So I sent it to a new expert, and I also had a response from the respondent, and I provided both sides of the story to the expert and all of the same documents that the original expert had reviewed. And the new expert, after considering both sides of the story, felt that the respondent's response was very believable, provided explanations to the allegations, the expert prepared an overlay of the respondent's survey with the 1950 USGS map, and it reasonably lined up with the respondent's survey. And in conclusion, the expert made it clear that he can offer no opinion unless the complainant were to get a new survey. The new expert did not find any violations based on what I sent, and the respondent said that he had included all of the existing roadways as shown on the plat and denies creating a false easement as alleged by complainant when he did the original survey in '99. The respondent also tried to talk to the complainant many times, offered to meet the complainant on the property and explain the easement, and the respondent was never able to have any decent conversation with the complainant. The complainant would just shout at him and basically threatened the respondent, gave him a week to quote-unquote fix the easement to the complainant's liking, or he was going to file this complaint. And of course, the respondent said, look, I'll meet you. We need to go over this. And the complainant just refused to do so, so he filed this complaint. And therefore, I don't have any evidence to go forward with a revocation, let alone any discipline at this time. So I wanted to present this to you to decide if we want to ask the complainant to go and get another survey, considering what we know now, or we can close this matter, because I just don't have any evidence of any violations.
Chairman, could I have the microphone there?
Go ahead, Mr. Kaufman.
So if I understand correctly, when it originally was submitted, it was reviewed by an expert reviewer and found, I'm going to read this, had violated standards of practice, exhibited clear lack of general surveying knowledge, and found him overall incompetent. Those are pretty strong words.
I agree.
Those are strong words.
I agree.
Yeah, I see where Jay's going. I 100% agree. This is a 180. This is startling.
I agree.
So move forward here. The surveyor finally responds.
Correct.
How much of a time gap are we looking at here? 'Cause
Well,
I saw originally there was no response from the respondent.
well, I only got this case, quite recently compared to how old it is. So I've looked in the file to try to find where the respondent was even provided an opportunity to respond, and I can't find anything. When I asked for a response, when I first got this, I got one right away.
Okay, does have some prior history on disciplinary action. 3, in fact, if I read it
Yes.
right. Okay. Interesting.
I know he's had a license. He's in his 70s, and according to the respondent, he's basically retired, but he's not going to give up his license for something he's saying he didn't do. And I know he also is quite sick.
How did this come about again? If I'm reading this, it just never closed.
Right.
I mean,
So-
there had to have been a time gap here between the initial first review of the expert reviewer, and then all of a sudden he does respond after a second review.
I mean, as soon as I got the case, when I first reached out to the respondent, he was cooperative and always cooperative. And I can't really speak to what went on with the past attorney, but I don't know why the response wasn't, I guess, sought after harder. But it's to me, it seems very much as a he said, she said. There was a verbal agreement between a predecessor to the property, because the complainant owned the property, and the respondent spoke with that predecessor to title, and there was a verbal agreement about a roadway, and based on all of the respondent's explanations, it's clear to me that he doesn't think he did anything wrong, and the expert doesn't see that either based on what we gave him. And he said the only way I could say for sure is if I had a new survey. So I know the original expert just only had the strong words of the complainant to go off, which,
It really is quite a change when the second expert steps in and has nowhere near as strong a language, and is really his opinion is, if I read this correctly, is I'm not really sure. But if
he made it very clear. The expert said, I can't do anything with what you gave me. I can't find these violations, because the respondent's response explains everything.
Apparently there's more to the story. Is that right? There's some new information?
I mean, not new information, just an explanation.
Not so much that, but something about the surveyor himself.
Yeah.
He's going through some issues here.
Yes.
Right there, okay. He's having some health issues or something, is that right?
Oh, well, I mean, when I first reached out to the respondent, yes, he made me aware that, he's retired because he mostly because he's been diagnosed with cancer and he's getting treatment for that, and he's not really in the industry. I don't know, that's been a little while back. I'm not sure if he is still fighting that, or, but he's 75 years old, and he said, I'm not giving up my license, but I'm not necessarily practicing either because I'm very ill.
What was your name?
My name is Erica Smith.
Erica. Are you not troubled by the change in the opinions?
I am troubled, but I don't know the technicalities of land surveyor law, so I trust the expert when it comes to that. I can't, no matter what the original expert said, I can't use that. So I can't even look at it. I can't consider it, because if I'm going to go to a formal hearing and try to take away this license, I can only use what I can use, and what I have is really the only thing I can look at. So I'm not really, I mean, I'm bothered by it, but I can't explain it.
Okay.
If that makes
So
sense.
based on what you're saying there, we throw out the everything the old expert said, because we can't use it. Irrelevant, right?
Well, the new expert was given the old expert's report, too.
Okay. But based on their review of that and their review of what they saw and who they interviewed, they come to the opinion that no disciplinary action is appropriate. I think the gentleman, while it's terrible that he's got cancer, that's totally irrelevant to our decision. And so you've got our expert who's saying, you either bring me more evidence or it's a dismiss, it sounds like.
Well, he wouldn't make that. He can't give that determination on whether it should be dismissed or not. He can only say, I don't have any evidence of a clear violation.
Is he saying he can give any recommendation other than I want more evidence?
Let's see what his exact words are.
I just want to jump in and say our investigators don't give recommendations on like civil penalties or discipline. What they do is they look at the cases and tell us whether or not, in their opinion, they found a violation, and then leave it up to legal to make legal's recommendations, and then ultimately y'all decide how you want to approach the case.
That's fair. However, it sounds like he can't even make any conclusion. There is no conclusion to be drawn because I don't have enough information, whether there's a violation. Correct?
Well, he said the only thing that could show a violation, in his opinion, is a new survey. Period. Those were his exact words. The complainant would need to have a new survey for me to be able to find whatever it is that he's saying is there, because he doesn't see it based on the overlay that he presented and the respondent's explanations.
That in and of itself, maybe it's not to Tim and Jay, but that in and of itself is confusing to me because he's reviewing a survey and doesn't see anything missing from it.
I want to say a couple of things, and not necessarily about this case, but I'm going to say them in general. Number one, we struggle, and Ms. Roxanne and Ms. Ashley have heard this before, we as a board struggle with and I don't mean this disrespectful to anyone, but with the abbreviated or lack of reviewers' comments to assist us in making the proper decision. Okay. Secondly, it has been more than evident to this board member that the reviewers that we have had, since we have had reviewers, this have them, but since we have had reviewers, are quite predictable without name as to how they review and the results that we get. And that's very vague, and I'm not going to go to much more detail than that, but I do know that we have a reviewer that would not have made this, I'm going to say, lack of conclusion in the same matter that the previous reviewer made, because this is almost as though the current, to me, the current reviewer is not even looking at the same thing the original reviewer looked at. I mean that, and I know
that's not the case, but I understand.
I know you know that's not the case, but it's very evident. I mean, my initial, I've got a lot of reactions to this, but my initial reaction after hearing your presentation is to request the legal to send it to another reviewer. That's my gut reaction, because I've got a whole lot of other things to say about it, and I don't think I need to say them at this point until we have somebody else look at this.
That's a
thing.
good recommendation, Tim.
Because we have black and we have white, and they're just too far apart looking at the same thing. And somehow or another, it's just like us. It's why we have an odd number to vote on things. Somehow or another, I'm not, and certainly please appreciate, I'm not on a witch hunt for this licensee. But what I am on is trying to find out what the facts are. And somehow or another, we don't have those, and the only way I know to get there is to get another review. And I realize that costs this board money, but that's where I think we need to go.
Jay?
That's exactly what was in my mind, too, was I was going to ask the question, can we request this to a second review? Because quite honestly, the most current review gives us no answer, gives us no path. And especially the exact opposites of the extreme. I mean, the first one called him incompetent. Again, that is a
Well, he
strong
also
word.
used the words incompetent because the respondent was not defending his actions.
Well, that's part of it, yeah, and obviously that has
Regardless, when you say incompetent at any
know.
point, that's a big deal.
yeah.
Well, I believe me, I looked this over with a fine-tooth comb because I had the same exact reaction you did.
And, part of our process here is to rely, the reason we have those reviewers is to be able to provide us as a board with the guidance as to what we're looking at, because we don't have the specifics. Tim was alluding to that. And we, in order to make a qualified, educated, based on evidence decision here, right now I don't have that. I don't. You may feel comfortable, I don't.
No.
And we need that, and that's the source right now that this board uses, is those reviewers. So I agree with Tim. He was reading my mind on that. That was kind of strange. But a second reviewer, he probably got crazy. If he got what was in my mind, he'd be concerned. But I do think if we can do that, because I know we have multiple reviewers, if we can get a second review on that, or I guess actually be a third, to be honest with you. But in a lot of that reasoning is because of the extreme two ends, the polar ends of what we're seeing here. There is smoke here, but I don't see fire yet. And so that would be my request as well.
I noticed this was a 2015 complaint.
Yes.
Who was that about the transition time?
I'm not sure when, that sounds about right. I know this was Josh's case.
I felt like it was.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I remembered it.
And when I got it, obviously, it was quite old, and the expert was no longer available, and I did what I had, what I could do with what I had.
No, I don't question what you've done at all.
Right, no.
And I think you've given us proper advice. I just think that we're not there. I don't think any of the three of us are willing to make any decision about what's been presented. And that's no disrespect to you.
No, I totally understand, but I do want to say the respondent responded to the specific alleged, violations, and I felt like they were also very clearly believable, and it made sense. And just to reiterate, I want to make sure I make it clear what the new expert's opinion is, and the expert's exact words. And they are, in my opinion, the complainant must get his property surveyed in order to get a clear view of any discrepancies that are here. I have prepared an overlay of the respondent's survey with the USGS map, and the overlay reasonably lines up with the respondent's survey. I don't know if that makes any difference or any changes, but I feel like the technicality might, I don't know.
All right, let me tell you about the USGS map.
Because I'm not really that familiar.
Well, vertically, they're almost plus or minus 20 feet vertically. And horizontally, so you're not comparing, the whoever is not comparing apples and oranges. They're not comparing apples and apples, they're comparing apples and oranges.
Right. But that's all that we got. So I wanted to make sure I made that clear.
The most important question I guess I have, and I think you said it, but I want to make sure, is that in 2015, when this complaint was filed, there was no response by the respondent, but I think I heard you say it was in your review of the file that you didn't see anything sent to the respondent.
Correct. But that doesn't mean the complaint wasn't sent.
And I'm hoping that we get through this, because we've had some other instances of licensees, a variety of things of where, quote, notice was not done. And this is the first legal case that I know of that's happened.
And in this case, the only thing I can add is, because it's older, to the best of our knowledge and search, Erica couldn't find proof
Yeah, I'm not
that the
saying-
notice was sent. That doesn't mean it wasn't, but there's no proof. So we can go with that, and now we do have a response.
Let me ask you this question. Did you review the board minutes to when this case was discussed in 15? If not, I can go home. I've got them. I can go home and pull them up and see what we had, because in the staff's review at that time, it would have said, respondent was notified, no response, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll be glad to look that up when I go home.
Let me see if it says. In the original presentation, I know Josh states that the respondent has never replied to the department regarding this complaint.
Well, that was telling me.
That implies-
Right, and which is why I say I can't find proof, but that doesn't mean, it could have been a hard copy, it could have been not put in the right folder.
Right.
But as soon as I asked, I got a response.
I would infer from that, because, I mean, to the best of my knowledge, Josh always went by the staff procedure, legal staff procedure.
Yeah, that is the procedure, to always send it out.
Right.
Before
He
you do anything.
Gets the complaint, he sends to the respondent, and so forth and so on, accumulates data and so forth and so on before it goes to the reviewer. And, having said that from the minutes, I think that he probably did his job. It just maybe didn't get stuck in the right file.
Right, no, I mean, that probably, I'm sure that the procedure was followed by Josh. It's just somehow, just an old file.
I do have a question, just as you make your decision on how we want to proceed on a couple of things. One of the items is, obviously, the new reviewer suggested a new survey, so I don't know if that's something we want to discuss and would ever do, or if that make a difference. If not, then it sounded like we would be inclined to getting a second completely different review, and I believe we have a contract with at least 2 reviewers. But in the event that right now the only current contract is with the one individual, and I'm not 100% certain because I don't send those out, then we would have to go outside of our normal reviewers, which might cost a little bit more. I just want to throw that out there. But that doesn't mean you would change your decision and not send it to a completely different independent person.
Well, the question of getting a new survey, I'm a little concerned about, granted it may be necessary, but I'm a little concerned in this board providing that direction, because, somebody's got to pay for that survey. I don't think this board's going to say, hey, look, Mr. or Miss Complainant, go get a new survey of your property so we can compare it for this case, and we'll be glad to send you a check for whatever John Doe Surveyor charges you. We can't do that. So I question that. Even though I think we could make a recommendation they did that, but I don't think they're under no obligation.
That's correct. And we've not done it historically, so I just want to throw that out there, that even though he's recommending, that's just not our path.
I would also like to point out that the board does not have the jurisdiction to compel a complainant to get a new survey, or for the board to send somebody out to perform a new survey on somebody else's property. So that's not really an option that we have.
Those little things that I notice when a reviewer reviews on some of the things that they say. But it would be my recommendation as a professional, not necessarily as the chair, that a new review be made of this case before this board.
Allowed to do that one, right?
Yes.
I think we can sneak under the wire on that.
I'll make a motion as such.
I'll second that.
Okay, we actually have a motion and a second to request legal to send this to another expert, and whatever that scenario may be, as Ms. Roxanne aptly described. So we're in discussion, so you can jump right in there, Ms.
Yes,
Roxanne.
so if we do only have one reviewer with a current contract, we can seek and see what other options are. An option might be, if the board is comfortable with it, one of you to recuse yourselves and review the report yourselves, and we've done that. And we do that in other programs. Our experts are our board members, and they would recuse themselves from voting,
Well,
but
the
you...
one thing I can say about that, the chair typically does not vote on disciplinary actions. He manages the vote. So
Right.
I would be glad to do
Perfect.
the
That's all I needed
review.
before we conclude it. If that's the
If that-
case,
if
that's
that is
the route.
necessary.
Perfect.
Because
Thank
I
you.
don't usually vote. But we do have a motion on the floor to request for a second expert review. Call for the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Well done there, Ms. Smith, by the way.
Very
well
much.
done.
It's my first time here with y'all, so I appreciate that.
That's a complicated one. you
Yeah, good
got.
presentation on a tough one.
Yeah,
Yes.
very well done.
Okay,
we're
we're
on-
to legislative update, Ms. Roxanne, unless you want to go another direction just yet.
Ashley is going to take over, and the legislative updates start on your iPads on page 38, I believe. We've got the answer from Tony. I don't know if you want to. No, page 38.
You're going to give us like a 10-minute update on that.
Oh,
To load.
it shouldn't. No, it's
I'm
the
kidding.
applications that gave us a problem for some reason. So on the legislative update, I'll turn it over to Ashley to answer any questions. And I did get a chance to email all but the very last one that Tim let me know about that impacts the industry, and it's on your iPads for your review.
Okay, so we have Senate Bill 0585/House Bill 0621. This bill would add surveying services as a profession that must be procured under the public contract via qualitative base selection in lieu of the current request for proposal process.
Can I speak to that while you're there?
Yes, you can.
Before you do, I
Yes, sir.
have some questions. Do either of you have any input on any of these things?
Can we take the fifth on that, Jay?
I'll let you have that one, too. Mr. Chairman?
I'm gonna take my chair hat off.
Okay.
I'm gonna put I'm a licensee in the state of Tennessee hat on.
Okay.
And I'm gonna answer your question, yes.
Okay. The reason I ask is because I felt like maybe you all should if you weren't. So that's good.
Well, we are.
Okay, good, good. I haven't read any of them yet.
Okay,
So
okay.
I'm not complaining yet. Don't worry.
Okay.
We'll get to that part. All right, go ahead.
But the one thing I wanted to say was, and that's why I asked Mr. Winter to stay, is this has been signed by the Speaker of the House and the Speaker of the Senate. It's on its way to the Governor. The Governor's not signed it yet, but should as far as we know. This may be one of the most beneficial and pointed piece of legislations that surveyors in the state of Tennessee will now have. They don't realize it, they will. And I'll give you just a brief history. In 2010, MTAS reviewed qualification-based services for architects, engineers, and surveyors. And in 2011, when we call it QBS legislation went to the Hill, for some reason surveyors were left out. And it was approved for architects and engineers. And I know Ms. Roxanne's been going through it with her engineering board recently. So when I saw this, I've been questioning QBS for a long time on this board. I know every minute Jay's been here, almost every meeting I've said something about it. Well, we finally had an opportunity this year to work on legislation, and we did so. I got things lined up to be presented, so forth and so on. And the legislature has found favor in it, primarily because of the MTAS review in 2010. They said we should have been a part of it. We just weren't, but now we're going to be that. So the thrust of this is there are very few states in the United States that have QBS. If you gentlemen remember recently, as in last week or two, I think maybe POB or the NSPS newsletter that you get by email mentioned that the state of Maryland just got QBS. I know the state of Alabama has QBS. Well, Tennessee's just about getting ready to get it. And where this is so invaluable is it puts surveyors across the state on an equal footing with any type of local municipality or state government entity that is going to be what used to be bidding out surveying work. This now makes them base, and there's a regiment that goes with qualified base services. It now makes them base their proposals on the qualifications of the surveyors, and this is huge. Kind of breaks down the good old boy stuff just a little bit and gets it to where it's a more of a fair and level playing field, and you become qualified for the project before you ever discuss price, and that puts you
before price as well.
yes. Mm-hmm. So that puts you in a much better situation professionally as a surveyor. And I just want to say that I'm really proud that the legislature's considered this favorably up to this point, and I hope that the governor signs it here in the next few days. But it's a huge, huge thing. It's much bigger than the average surveyor realizes. Now, all surveyors in the state of Tennessee don't work for municipalities or state government agencies and so forth, but the ones that do, this is huge.
So just to clarify, this does not address contractual work that the surveyor takes on with a private client.
That's correct.
Just, Joe Smith needs to survey his property. That's not what we're talking about here. This is strictly, which might qualify as government-type work.
Right.
Your city, your county, your state will now be based on qualification-based selections. In other words, they'll address the project. They'll ask you for your qualifications to perform that scope of services. You'll submit prior history, the way that your best foot forward is how you're best qualified for this project. The project is then awarded based on that selection, and fee is never addressed until after a selection is made. In other words, XYZ Surveying is now selected because they're the best qualified. Now let's discuss price. And typically the way I've seen it worked is, if they can't come to a negotiated price, or fee, I should say, then they'll go to the second most qualified and work their way down the ladder that way. But generally speaking, a fee is usually negotiated that way. So this is firms that offer the surveying services with government-related entities. This is huge.
Did this, Tim?
Yes, sir.
Good job.
This.
One other thing, John, you care to stand at the podium while we have this discussion? I think your comments may be valuable.
He's asking you to stand up now.
Yeah, sorry.
This is reverse.
Just because you're so involved, you guys are more than I am in this legislation and what it means. I thought that Jay just had an excellent articulation for whoever's watching of what this means. John, did you have any, as far as your group, any other thoughts about how this is going to play out?
Admittedly, we thought that was the rule in our office for a long time. But we really did, because we would get stuff and people say, hey, we need you to get a bid for this. And the guy I work for, our director, he's like, we can't do that. We can tell you our qualifications and we can tell you what we can do and our experience, but we can't really just give you I like that. I will say that a little bit of me doesn't like that, because if it's the little guy that's maybe trying to get started, it's going to be hard for him to get in. I'm biased. We have 4 RLSs in our office. We got 50 people. We're in 3 lucky. So we're pretty qualified to do a lot of it. So I like that, but at the same time, it could be a little hard for the little. I like that, though. I don't like what's the best, undervaluing your service. I think a lot of surveyors kind of do. But I think it's a good thing. I think it does keep things more level.
I think you get better quality of work, in my experience with this, by doing this process, just from my limited exposure to it. And I think the cream rises to the top, honestly, on the way some of these people bid for it. Hey, if you want to run with the big dogs, you gotta pony up and get your ducks in a row to bid on these big municipality jobs, and what that entails. But I mean, obviously, we want to be pro everyone making money as surveyors, but I think it's a good thing. Well done, Tim.
Well, thank you very much. The other thing is that I think that this is one of these small steps towards a more professional known profession with the public.
I agree with that as well.
And that's huge, and that's the end game goal.
I completely agree with that, and that's why I say just a little bit of it it'd be hard for the little guy to
Right,
get
and you're
going.
right.
But he's got to get the experience to have the qualifications. to
And,
get
and
there.
you'll find that in small counties, that they won't change, really who ends up getting the work, basically, for the most part, because they won't have other firms coming in, because it'll still be pretty much the way that they do. This is a little more on the bigger scale. And,
I like it.
And it's always good to sit at the table with your credentials being the lead instead of your price. Go ahead, Ms. Ashley. Back to you. Thank
All
you.
right. Our next one is Senate Bill 0384, House Bill 0304. This bill, as amended, permits active members of the armed forces or their spouses who hold licenses in another jurisdiction to engage in their licensed profession in Tennessee without first obtaining a Tennessee license. The service member or spouse must be licensed and in good standing in the other jurisdiction. The amendment also requires the practicing individual to apply for renewal of their license either prior to the expiration in the other state or within 1 year of practicing within Tennessee.
I understand that right. In the way if I understood you correctly, and again, this is the first I've seen it. I don't know how this one got past me, but so if a military member, active military member or spouse is actively licensed in another state, that this gives them the ability to practice, advertise, and practice surveying, in this case, in Tennessee, without a Tennessee license. What do they stamp it with? Do we offer them? Do we provide them with a license and a stamp without? What do they stamp a survey with?
Sure, the regular stamp.
I'm not going to go in there with a Kentucky or just pick another state stamp.
Right.
I'm a little. That's kind of probably beyond the surface of the intention of this bill here. I get that, but I'm just kind of curious how that works.
So depending on the specifics of each law, then the programs are going to kind of have to address this temporary permit. What are they going to have to follow?
It's a temporary permit.
It's
Right,
a quick
and-
way. And we've had with all of our programs, really, what we consider an expedited military process. We really give them precedence over
Right, I agree.
anything
I
else.
understand that.
Online, if you
Well-
all have individuals that you've talked to, you mark, are you or your spouse military, so we can
Right.
rush it. So in whatever fashion this passes, then those programs that have the stamp, the architects, the engineers, the land surveyors, will have to address with the temporary permit, are they going to be allowed, because they've got this temporary permit, until we get all the credentials in a row to let them work.
Is it the military member or spouse's responsibility to address to the state? Let's just say they get transferred into Millington, for instance, the Navy in Millington. Is it their responsibility to contact the state to say, hey, I've been transferred to Tennessee, I'd like to actively survey in Tennessee, and I'm going to, under these rules right here, I'm going to start surveying?
Well,
They would still apply with us.
They would, okay.
So, yes,
Okay.
so we would see it, but.
Okay, so they do have to
right-
make an active.
And in
intent.
this case, we'd have to look at their plats and go through the
We would,
application
okay.
process and the
Right.
exam. So in the meantime, this allows them
and
to work.
In Section 5 here, it says that the Commissioner of Commerce and Insurance, and I'll abbreviate, shall promulgate, and I can't say that word. Go ahead, Jay.
He's
You're good.
It's all right.
You're good. I butchered it up best I could.
We'll go with it.
Rules to effectuate, that's another big word,
Wow, that was-
the purposes of this act. So basically, if this thing passes, the head of the commissioner of the department is going to have to say to Roxanne, say, hey, look, this thing's passed, for all your boards, we're going to have to do this. And that's probably what will happen.
And it will vary, right, by
Right.
board. So we've
Right.
got certain, and I'll use examples, I have barbers and architects, very different, right? So our barbers may still be allowed to shave and cut and have this temporary permit until education and exams are met, whereas the land surveyors or engineers or architects that are stamping may need specific rules done quicker.
Is this broad across all regulatory
Yes,
boards? It is.
yes,
Okay, so it's not
that's-
specific to us?
No.
Isn't there already something to this effect in our rules?
The expedited piece is
Yes.
in our rules, yes,
Yeah.
but this takes it a little bit.
Yeah, they've took it further here.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm assuming this won't come up very often.
On this board, I wouldn't imagine.
I wouldn't imagine
Have we ever?
a active duty armed forces member is going to be also doing surveys.
I could see the engineers. I know there's quite a bit of PEs that are actively, serve active service in the military. There's, Corps of Engineers, for example. So, they're all almost mandated to have a PE license in some state, and they obviously actively transfer from duty station to others. So I could see that application. Sure. It would be rare, I would think, in survey. But yeah, I'm all about it. It's all good.
All right, our last one is House Bill 0699, which was signed by the governor, and this establishes the Tennessee Plane Coordinate System as the new system of defining and stating traffic positions and locations in Tennessee.
I can probably address that one. That was my baby there. While Tim was tackling the more difficult situation, this one here I did address. In fact, I actually had the opportunity to actually draft the bill itself. Sat there and typed it up myself, which is kind of neat. Must say it's the first time I've ever done that, and submitted it through my local representative, Tom Leatherwood, freshman representative there in the Memphis area. He found a co-sponsor and ran with it. There was one set of revisions that went through after I did submit it through TDOT for their review. There was the Tennessee GIS group. They reviewed it as well. And then the board, the TAPS board, was obviously aware of it as well. And there was some review by them. There were some comments. There was one amendment that I did draft up and submit and was adopted. And I got the pleasure of watching the bill progress through the House and through the debates, and watched the videos. Had several phone calls with the representative and the senatorial sponsor as well. Senator Rose, which is he's out of Tipton County, I believe, in that area. Both are freshmen. Both Leatherwood and Rose are freshmen. But they ran with it and kept me in very close contact. It was interesting. Just out of the blue, I was at my kid's baseball game, and my phone rings, and there it is. Senator Rose calling me. I'm like, wow, this is kind of cool, But what the effect of this is pretty black and white, to be quite honest with you. There's really no controversy here. This is all about adopting the new datum standards that are going to come out in 2022. Basically, there was a great presentation by Mr. Doyle at the last TAPS conference that explained everything about what's going on and the progress that NGS has made with it and where they're trying to get to it. And the generic part of what this bill does is very simply allows Tennessee to officially adopt the current datum that NGS adopts. It's just that simple. And Tennessee had done that with the 27, had done that with the 83, and this is just a natural progression. But I did have the opportunity to speak with several other House members who questioned it, just wanted a basic understanding of what's going on here. They were all very comfortable with it. And I think as it progressed through the House vote and the Senate vote, I don't know that there were any nay votes to it. I think there were some that may have abstained or decided not to vote for whatever reason. But other than that, it was by an overwhelming. If it wasn't unanimous, it was certainly by an overwhelming majority vote, and it was signed by the governor. So we have an official signed bill. So done and done. I'm 1 for 1, I guess. Tim is 1 for 1 as well.
Did you get a pen the governor used to sign with?
Did not get the actual
forgot the
pen,
licensing law we worked on, but we won't talk about that one.
Yeah.
But I will say that Tennessee is now one of, I think, less than 10 states across the United States that have now approved this. Right. All the jurisdictions are going to have to.
They'll all get there.
But we're one of the early ons, which is great.
Mm-hmm. Process works. It does work.
You did the key thing back to you in your independent capacity as a land surveyor or Tennessee resident. That's what you pursue.
Independent, absolutely
yes,
independent.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
Okay, so we can
cover that legislative update. We're good.
Right.
We're good.
I have to say that's probably one of the most encouraging legislative reports that we've had in several years. It really is. It really is. Those are huge strides, and we're very thankful for all those that participated. Okay, Ms. Roxanne, I guess we're up to the director's report.
Perfect. Thank you. You are on your iPads on page 63, the first piece, which isn't, thrilling, but we'll get there. This is the budget, the revenues versus expenses. We know where we lie about this time of year, so it doesn't look fantastic, but it's to be expected. So I think we're okay. We're doing everything we can. We are going to probably release the 2019 renewals maybe in October, even just to give us all of October, November, and December, especially since the audit piece for the C is new. Give them plenty of time to read it, understand it. As always, we'll have procrastinators till the last week in December. But if we can start getting some of those in a little bit earlier, that'll be good. But obviously, this fiscal year will end with us in the red. I didn't see anything that needed necessarily to be addressed unless you have questions. On page 65 of your iPads, I put this together shortly after we did the TAPS presentation that Ashley and I attended, which was wonderful in March. So they had some general questions, and so I've gone ahead and listed our number of licensed land surveyors, which is 1,100 even. I don't think we'll ever have that again, so that I didn't round. That was exactly
that's
the number.
unusual.
Yeah. So it is, if you recall, when we renewed the 2017 batch, I think we were at 1,233, I want to say. So we've had quite a few go inactive or retire since then, because this number drop to me was significant. Within there's 748 that are Tennessee residents. I did a search of the age because these questions came up at the TAPS meeting. So I wanted to make sure, and I'll include this in our minutes when we approve this set of minutes at the next meeting. But those over the age of 55 are 613 individuals, and those over the age of 60 are 434, because both those questions had been raised, just kind of for us to know.
So if my math is right on that, there's 53 surveyors in the state under the age of 55.
Got it. I didn't want to list that. I just thought it looked pretty rough, but yes. So I love the idea.
Jay, how old are you?
I still qualify under the.
You're in there.
For a little while.
But I thought the idea that came up with the Boy Scouts and those pieces of education are all great things, the different tracks for them to come in. So along those lines, I did want to give us kind of our numbers of new people. And 2015, we had 18 brand new licensees. 2016 has been our biggest year so far with 40. And then,
Because of the high school
right.
sunset.
The sunset. So we did see just a small increase in 2018. So we're hopeful that with the expedited process for the Tennessee state exam and those things, when we finish 2019, we'll be able to see a higher number, and it looks like we will. I just didn't run it because we're so early in the year that there's no point. But that's kind of where we ended up for 2020. The other question that was posed at the exam was regarding the PSI information. So we have statistics for the 2017 and 2018. So basically, we've done 2 years of the exam. Total number to submitted to test have been 37. Passing is 30. 7 are the ones that have had to take a repeat exam. So we've got roughly an 81% passing score, and worked on, with Tim's help, thank goodness, more questions and updates to the exam. So those will be released here soon. We just don't have enough of a testing pool to have data on great questions, not so great questions. So that's going to take us a minute.
Those numbers strictly from CBT exams?
They're strictly the state.
It's all computer-based. There's no
With
paper.
PSI, all computer-based, yeah. Yeah, this is our state-specific. And along those lines, I think Tim had one of his questions regarding the PSI exam cost fee. So, so far, we've paid PSI roughly $17,500, which was in the contract. It was that original kickoff of putting the exam and then the second round that we've done. So I think we're sort of in line with where we expected to be in the contract. The exam cost to the applicant, I believe, is $225, and we kept it in line with exactly what we had with the paper, knowing that if PSI needed to at any point bill us for the changes, the travel, any of that, we will get that, and it's in the contract. But I know you wanted to kind of look at that.
But what I'm trying to get at on that is, how much is the board paying for that differential?
So far, this is what we've paid has had to do with the exam itself. We have not been paying for any of the differential. The $17,500 is basically 2 invoices early on in 2017 when we started the process, and then the final release of the exam and updates. Based on the contract, I think it was $3,700. It was broken down into chunks. So we should be, after the information from Mr. Alvarez that we did the exam review with, we should have some type of an expense, I would think, but I haven't reviewed the contract to see if he sent us anything from the WebEx that you all did.
Doing some fuzzy math, if 37 people took the exam, by the numbers here, and they pay $225 a piece. That's $83.25. And if we paid them $17.5, so we're out about $9,500. So that's saying that the board is out about $250. That's just real vague math. About $250 per examinee that it's costing us.
For them to have made this exam, that over
Right.
time, we won't have those expenses anymore because the exam's done now.
Yeah, that expense should theoretically continue to go down.
Absolutely.
Over time.
Right. No, we've
And
picked up the chunk.
the only time that it won't go down is when we do a new exam writing session or something of that nature.
Correct. And in the paper world, I don't have the figures in front of me, but I know we subsidized the paper exam as well when it existed.
We did, that is correct.
So,
It was not,
there's not a big difference.
it wasn't to that level because until NCAAS began to go to CBT, in the paper world, Mr. Messier was given the FS, the PS, and the TS. And then we dropped the FS, and then we dropped the PS. And now we've dropped the TS from the paper world. So that cost that we had with him in the exam administration was covered better because of the FS exam. It was just more dollars in relation because they were given at the same time, only twice a year, etc. So I knew that when we went to complete CBT that we would still have a pretty good cost, and that's what I was trying to get at. So basically, in a nutshell, in broad round numbers, we're probably spending about $500 for a TS exam right now, because it's still in its infancy, and that's about where I thought it would be. So that's about right. Okay, and that's what I was trying. That's what I was trying to get at. Okay.
I think it's a great thing to look at the whole picture. It will go down.
I think
but
we
yes,
have to
we knew we
simply
had
because
to.
of our budget, because our budget's kind of, narrow, and the only way that we have to change that is to change the fees of some sort, either create fees or change fees, and the legislature's not been very fond of either one of those at this point in time.
I don't think any of us are. If we can limit those things and keep doing business the best we can, that's the approach. Okay, so that is licensing information and our budgets, and then the last piece that I've got before we do new business and then readdress the courses with Mr. Thompson and whatever else the board wants to do, we may be able to get done before you go to lunch. I'll let you discuss that. But the last piece that I have here is regarding a report for complaints, and I got it to fit on one page, not sure how, but I ran all of our closed complaints for 2017 and 2018. These are complaints that are now available to the public through the disciplinary action report. But the disciplinary action report is a monthly report, and it's by program. So if you open May, you're going to get everything. You scroll down and look at the engineers you're interested in, the land surveyors, and so forth. What I'm proposing, if the board likes it and wants to have this, and I did this with a couple of my other programs, is because our numbers are low, I can do 2 years on one report. If it looks good to you all, we can put this on the website. This is, again, what's already out there under the disciplinary action report, but it's just our profession. I started in the last cases from 2016 all the way to the ones we just closed in January 2019, but they're technically 2018 cases. So it lists everything, just in case because we don't do the newsletter anymore, if we wanted to put this out there and you thought it would benefit and protect the public.
Go right ahead, Mr. Cobb.
When you said it's already out there on the disciplinary reports, I've seen those disciplinary reports. My question is, are those redacted in any way? The names especially?
No, once a complaint is closed, such as these, it's available to the public. There is
Full names and everything?
everything. So that's why you're seeing them here as you are.
This is the first time I've seen the names.
Right.
I mean,
So
there's
they're
names
on
on
the
here I
discipline-
recognize. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah. The disciplinary action report shows the names.
Okay, all right.
For every profession. So if you're wanting to get a haircut tomorrow, you go out there and make sure your barber's okay, the shop's okay, and for that matter, any accountants. So that's where I'm running this report. And this is our new system. So our licensees, you all have paid for a lot of our changes through technology, through core. We're now able to run some of these things that before were a little more complicated. What I've had to do, which wasn't that difficult because, again, we don't have that many cases, the summary itself is really a typed summary of, if the consumer turns it in, it's what they typed. So it could be this massive piece that, even if you wrap the text, you would have to have 5 pages. So I have sort of simplified the summary so it makes sense. And I can only do that in a program that has this many. I could never in some of my other programs. So it makes sense. Close with a letter warning, close with no action, outside of jurisdiction. You can clearly see which are civil, penalty, and education. So this program doesn't have that huge number of consumer complaints with penalties and so forth. They're easy to flip.
Supposing this be available on the website?
I'm happy to put it on the website, yes.
Okay.
If the board would like to see it, now that it's at our fingertips to do, so if you're okay, I don't mind having it as it is unless you want to break it down, but we were able to fit 2017 and 2018 in one page. I think it's an easy, quick glance, and then I'll do 2019, and if it's only a handful, we make a decision, do we publish it? Again, because it's out there, but now the technology is allowing us to be able to make it available for just this profession.
And this isn't information that's already available at other resources. It's already out there.
It's out there. You just have to check. So if you were looking for the middle person on there that says unlicensed for Mr. Scott, then you'd have to find him on the month that closed, and you would never see him again.
Are you asking us to vote to whether or not to put this on our website, or?
I don't know that you have to. You're welcome to. If the board gives me the discretion and the decision that you wanted, I was asked to put this on by another program. I thought, well, since I'm doing it for them and I can quickly put yours together, I wanted you to see it. So you can do a motion and ask me to put it on every month, knowing that you do want it and think it would benefit and protect the public. I'm happy to put it out in this view because this is finished for the 2 years.
I want to reiterate that this is already public information. It's available
Absolutely.
at other sources already. We're
Absolutely.
not a sole source to this
No.
information. This just consolidates.
And what we've gotten with the disciplinary action report, and that's where we point the media to when they ask questions, it's on the disciplinary action report, and they go through it. So a lot of the media channels look at our stuff every single month, and they similarly they'd say, well, I've got to look at it every month and look at each profession. It would be nice if it was, you could filter it or do something with it. And right now you can't with that report.
So walk me through what Jay
Yeah.
said. He said it's readily available out in the public. What does that actually mean?
On our website, under the contact, I think the last button to the right, it's either Consumer Services or Contact Us. When you pull it, you will see Disciplinary Action Report. And when you click it, the document that opens is what our legal puts out there every month for all the regulatory boards. So it might start with accountancy, which is profession, 100 maybe my athletic commission. It's going to be an order of profession. Architects are going to be in there, engineers are going to be, and it's going to flow from the first profession under the regulatory boards to the very last one, which might be dead management. And it's on a monthly basis. So the disciplinary action report is for the month of May, June, et cetera.
Okay, if you scroll down far enough, it would go back to 20.
You'd be opening each month.
Okay, so
That's
there's
the
like May,
Yep.
April, okay.
Exactly. And it's
there-
everybody.
And there's no way to search for that. If I
At all.
Googled somebody's name, it wouldn't direct
No,
me
it's a-
to that
it's
page.
It's a PDF locked.
PDF?
You'd never find it, right.
Other boards doing this?
I'm putting out there for the architects and engineers. That's because they too didn't have the newsletter going out that used to have it. It was very important to them and have something to protect the public and to have other firms and their people in their industry know what's going on. Problems. And they too found it on the disciplinary action report, but you have to search it, and it's month by month. So until we have a better, now it could be that in the next 6 months, that's a better report and it is searchable, right? I'm only interested in motor vehicles, whatever. But until then, we don't have it. So they requested it, and this is what I did for them, and kind of took a look at what we had, and I thought, I can fit 2 years in one page. I'm just going to get it done and have you see it.
Well, in applying what I know about the professional world I live in, I mean, Tennessee Bar Association sends out a daily email. Only thing people look at is who's getting suspended and who's getting censured. Okay, that's the only thing the attorneys want to know. exactly.
What's Chase?
So if
You know, Jay's opening this up and saying, "Oh my gosh, whoever one of these people is, Danny Goldberg." You know, that's interesting. And if we are thinking about what would be valuable to a consumer, it would be being able to Google Danny Goldberg and actually having something pop up about what happened. A PDF can't do that. But on top of that, if we are also protecting our industry and our colleagues, I would probably want something on there about what actually happened so the consumer can say, it doesn't even sound like a big deal. Here, I'm going to hire them anyway.
Right.
And that's a lot of work for you.
So, and you're absolutely right. And if you notice, most of these are closed with no action.
Right,
So it's,
right.
and again, that's good, right? Because that's part of the profession. The complaints aren't anything that would scare us to say we
And
got
if
to do
there's
more.
no action, it doesn't get reported to me for. So should we put ones with no action even on there? I don't think you should. But I mean, that's not a decision that I can make by myself. Because we're basically saying they did everything correctly.
Well, the list is of complaints filed, not of complaints with further action. There's a difference there.
I agree with you, but if I had a list for all the complaints against me, it would be long. But the ones that were found to be valid are zero. So there's a difference there that's important to me as I'm trying to make my way as a businessman. So I wouldn't want it on there if there was no action. And I think it's unfair to have it on there if there's no action.
So you all can decide. I mean, and again, we don't have to put this out there. So as I'm showing complaints, that's what I wanted you to look at. These are in 2 years, all we've done. And it's every complaint. And now individuals can file the complaints themselves. So when you log on, you're not just sending an email. You're filing the complaint. You see the number, the 2018 dash, you see it when you end. So and if it's outside the jurisdiction, it's still an open complaint. It's still numbers we're going to deal with.
I was just going to say, too, complaints that are closed with no action are not put on our DAR. So it's only ones that have some type of disciplinary action, like a letter of caution, letter of warning, civil penalty, revocation, suspension. But things that are just closed outright don't go on the DAR.
That would limit this then if we base it on that.
Significantly.
Yeah, to just 1510 maybe.
What I was going to say was, back when I created the newsletter that no longer exists, one of the topics in there was disciplinary actions, and those actions were for a registrant that had some form of discipline, whatever that form was. So for my purview, and I think that's what I'm hearing across the dais here, is that only the ones with a form of action should be included in this report and put on our website. Because as as Jed aptly said, if somebody's got 10 closed with no actions, it really don't mean anything. I as the chair would like to see this report periodically, because we normally don't get to see the names, but periodically I would like to see it. But as far as something that goes on the website, I would prefer to the ones that had action of some form, even if it's a warning letter, a caution letter, or whatever it is, and put that on the website. I have no issue with that. If somebody wants to go on our website and look about complaints with action, with some type of disciplinary action, even if it's just a letter, then they ought to have the ability to go on there and do it.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I have to agree with it too. And one of the reasons I agree with that is that it prevents, that disgruntled competitor that wants to, blackball his competitor that's in the same county
It
as
happens.
him. And I'm going to go on, and because it's easier to go online and file online, there's a chance for abuse there. There's the potential for abuse. And with the goal of getting your competitor's name published here for 10 different complaints, all of which had no action.
Yeah, Jay and I are going to talk to the same client about a job, and Jay finds it's necessary to tell the client, you need to go look at the board website, and you'll see right here on page wherever and item whatever, you'll see that Tim's had 2 complaints filed against him, but there was no action on them. But you'll see that, and that's all he says is there's 2 complaints there. So I see that as sort of an unfair thing, and that's why I want to go the other way.
And I'm also going to add if kind of the date that the report's updated, so as we add 20.
I think it's great because that's one thing that the licensees want to know, is there somebody out there that's doing something in my neighborhood wrong, does that.
My goal of it is not so much that, which I agree with Tim, but my goal is the protection of the public. The public needs to know what surveyors out there have action that have been filed against them. Now, how they choose to act on that is up to the consumer.
Right.
But I think it is valuable information to know that if I were a client looking for a surveyor, I have this resource available to me. If I see Joe Smith surveyor has 2, 3, 4 multiple complaints against him that have had actions, that might give me concern.
2 questions. Is there a difference between dismissal with no action and closed with no action?
Not that, yeah, I think it's just wording.
And then the other one is, you keep talking about updating with the years. Now, are you saying like what we are suggesting here, it would roll off after a year, or
No,
would be, okay?
no,
okay,
not
I
at
wanted
all.
to make sure I was clear on
And
that.
the disciplinary action report, I think, goes back to early 2008, 10. I mean,
Okay.
it just,
I just wanted to make, okay,
no, that's
gotcha.
the goal, so. And that is all that I have. If we want to start new business or the board wants to address, we skipped Mr. Thompson's piece. I don't know if there's anything we want to discuss other than he emailed you, Jay, and we've put it on here. Regarding the continuing education that.
I mean, he was scheduled to appear, is that right?
Yes.
And he's not here? I don't see him.
Just the email, I think, that came from him to you and wanting us to readdress why he wasn't approved. So we'll leave it as is. There's no change.
Likes to appear, I'd be glad to readdress it with him, but if he's not here, then nothing to discuss.
Mr. Winter, do you know if Mario is coming today, or? I have no idea. Okay. Tell you what, Miss Roxanne, it's 11:30. Why don't we break for lunch? And then we come back and we'll clean this up. It probably won't take too long. That's all
New
right.
business, and we just have 2 applicants that you all will need to review. That's it.
Okay.
Okay? So
So we'll take a break and come back, say 12:30.
it sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Talking to somebody, it's like, oh,
7 hours is what she said.
Can't be right.
I was going to say, you're not in the air for 5 hours. No way.
I'm sorry. Take your time. We'll all get our iPads back up. And I think we're under new business unless we wanted to do applications first. I'll leave that up to you, sir.
Welcome back. It's now 12:30. Let's go ahead and continue with new business, and we'll work our way to applications because those usually go pretty good quick. Next item is 65-year-old continuing education exemption.
We got an email asking about that, and so the individual didn't come up. I don't know if you've got anything else other than, obviously, for our continuing education exemption, when you renew, you're allowed to say, I'm 65 years old and taking the exemption. They still have to have the ethics, those 2 credits. There's nothing else different or new that we need to present to licensees, correct? And if they're taking the exemption, that those 2 hours, those 2 credits are still required. Okay.
Best I know.
Then we will skim through this. He had sent an email, I think, to you early on before the meeting, just a question because he's thinking of taking it. They're going to be able to take it with the renewal, just like we did 2 years ago. Claim it. We'll check the age, obviously. The complaint history we can claim as well. And then if they're audited, they would have to prove the 2-hour C. That's the only thing.
In here, he might have
may find
something in his
something
mind.
differently.
Might have something.
Well, I know you and I had spoken about
Oh,
it.
yes, yes.
And it was my take that, if you were under 65, then you had to have the 30. does say that the board can exempt these folks under hardships. But I would think someone coming out of retirement, we would not exempt, that we would go by the rule.
By the age requirement, you mean in the no discipline?
However, I would have to yield to Ms. Ashley because 0820-05-.07, reinstatement to active licensure, says that satisfaction of biennial PDH requirement multiplied by the number of years inactive or retired status up to a maximum of 30 PDHs, which in my mind, if they were only required to have 2, then the maximum that we could require them to have would be 4 for one, oh no, I take it back. It says multiplied by the number of years inactive or retired. So every how long this individual had been retired, we could require them to have 2 times that number of years by the way I read that. If read correctly.
What rule number are you on again?
0820-05-.07, reinstatement to active registration. And as I understood the question, Ms. Roxana, it was about an individual that had already retired their license.
Right.
And they wanted to become
I
active.
think you're correct,
again.
yes. Okay.
That's the only thing that I see. And I assume, was it longer than 2 years they'd been retired?
I did not pull up his history
Okay.
at all. The question was simply posed of what we could do, and we could get in writing the request for the board to consider, bring it back out and how long they would have to take, or what the unique situation would be in their case.
Sure. I think that would be the thing to do.
Okay.
Okay. Righty. Next item on new business is comedy application expediting the process. I'm guilty for this. Jed said imagine that. But I pose this to the board for 2 reasons. One reason is the expense of examination that we discussed earlier. But 2 is being able to potentially move these individuals through the process a little quicker. And I'm not implying that we should give anyone their license. I think everyone should still test. But one thing that you're going to hear at NCEES this year is, we're all familiar with the Kentucky situation where they basically just eliminated their state specific. There is a movement considering for comedy applications establishing a criteria for the comedy applicant. For example, let's say that criteria is you have been licensed in, let's say, Missouri for 15 years and you have a clean discipline record. And now you want to become licensed in Tennessee. If that initial criteria was met, then our board could request an additional criteria. For example, our plat, which our plat, as you aptly stated earlier, Mr. Kaufman, really tells you whether or not you've paid attention to our regulations and went through our standards of practice as to what needs to be. So let's just say what if for a comedy applicant that met, like I said, I'm just going to throw something out, and it's just for discussion, that met 15 years of licensure from any state, any other jurisdiction, with no disciplinary actions, and they could submit a plat, and if so be if we want a legal description with it or whatever, with that application, we would then give them, basically allow them to have their license by reciprocity. Now that's what I'm throwing out for discussion. And that's what it is today, for discussion. Because, as I said, there is a movement I spoke with Andrew Ritter, the executive director of the North Carolina Board, and that currently is kind of what they're looking at. And I've talked with a couple of other board members in the South here recently, and they're talking about kind of the same type of thing. And part of this is mobility of licensure, which we hear about all the time with NCAAS. But the state-specific exam, in my opinion, if we met the education requirements that Kentucky had, which is a straight BS, I would be in favor, with the PS being strengthened currently, I would be in favor of eliminating the TS exam all the way across the board. But the first step to get to that point is to deal with the comedy applicants. And it's my notion that if you're licensed in a state for a period of time, whatever that period may be, clean, then you should be able to get licensed in the next state. That would begin to make most surveying jurisdictional boards much more mobile than they currently are. And that's the goal behind the thing. So I'm going to open it up for y'all's discussion, y'all's thoughts.
Well, I'll jump in first. I'll be the devil's advocate here for discussion. Actually, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I give a lot of weight and value to the TS exam. What it presents to me is, in my view of it, I look at it as in a two-step process. We've got the testing portion, and we've got the submission of the plats and descriptions. Obviously, we all, in the submission of the plats and descriptions, were part of the proposal you were making there, and I agree with that. I wouldn't want to lose that. And there's great value in that. But I also give an equal weight to the value of the state-specific exam, because the plats cover a certain section of our rules and regulations, mostly 08-2007. That's the majority of what those plats and descriptions are falling under, and a couple of the sub-ones underneath it. But there's a whole lot more to it than just that as far as rules, regulations, and the laws that we have to abide by. And I give a lot of trust and weight in the value of that 2-hour state-specific exam to cover those other entities. Because I want to have, as a board member, I want to be able to assure the public that each licensed surveyor in the state of Tennessee has come before us, submitted an application, and has been, to our standards, tested, not only in plat preparation and description preparation, but that they have an understanding and have proved to this board that they have an understanding of the full breadth of the rules and regulations involved. That's where I put the weight of the test. Now, when we're talking comedy applicants, these are the ones that are already registered in other states. They've proven to their boards that they're sufficient in their rules and regulations. The difference is that the majority of their work, I take it upon that, the majority of their work is performed in those states. So they have less familiarity with having surveyed in our state than a regular applicant from Nashville, Knoxville, Memphis, because they born and raised surveying by Tennessee standards, hopefully tutored under a Tennessee surveyor, know the rules and regulations. So I see it's only more important that a comedy applicant be tested to the rules and regulations of Tennessee, because by nature of their location, they have less experience having surveyed in Tennessee. So I put, in my view, I think it's more important that an out-of-state applicant, whether he's already licensed or not, but it doesn't matter, that they be tested to our standards and prove to us as a board and the confidence to the public that they understand the rules and regulations of our state to survey in. That's where I stand as a devil's advocate. I'm not saying what you're proposing is a bad idea. I probably could be warmed up to it, and I see where it's going, especially with the way Kentucky has approached it. It's early. That whole system in Kentucky, having removed that exam, is young. We don't know if that works. We don't know if it's a positive experience or a detriment to the public. We don't know that yet. And I see this could be a good step towards getting there. And I do agree with their requirements of a BS degree for that to happen. I would have difficulty making that happen here any other way. But that's the way I propose it as a devil's advocate, to why I would prefer that all applicants, including comedy, remain being tested on the state exams.
So let me ask a question. So you think that somebody licensed in another state for X number of years, say it's 10 years, think that they do not possess the abilities to complete a proper Tennessee land survey?
the abilities, but the experience.
What is the difference? I mean, are you talking about minutia or significant real differences?
You know, you can't answer that question because every state is different. I mean, that's the
Sure.
generic
Well,
answer.
for example, we had a guy from Alabama here this morning.
Sure.
I mean, are the differences so significant that we say we have to test his abilities, or we trust him because in lawyer world, after so many years of practice, they'll just wave you in, even though the laws are insanely different in each state. So, I mean, are we saying after 10 years, okay, there's still a surveyor after 10 years, there's still somebody is still hiring them and paying them money to do these things, so they're competent on some level, but we say we need to test their competency anyway?
Here, I'll make the argument exactly where you're going. With the gentleman that was before us earlier,
Sure.
I believe he said 14 years of experience in Alabama.
Maybe 12. It doesn't
It
matter.
did 10, 12,
yeah.
whatever it is. And to this point, he's made the application and he's submitted the plats. We know there was issues with plats already. We've
Sure.
discussed that at length.
Sure.
I had that personal discussion with him today at length on record. I lose confidence in that applicant on the testing process after having seen the effort that was put forth on the plats. He needs to prove to the board and the public that, okay, now he's jumped the hurdle on the plats, but I would raise a potential of question as to whether he could successfully complete the exam because of the example I saw on the plats. He's been 14 years in Alabama, may never have had a complaint at all. Maybe have a totally clean record, maybe the best surveyor ever in Alabama, I have no idea. But from what he presented to me already, I would have suspect to it.
And I get that. I mean, sometimes your skills wane as practice, or you get lackadaisical. I don't know that there's a perfect answer, but
There
out
isn't.
of curiosity.
Again, I just give a lot of weight to the value of the exam in my responsibility, our responsibility to the public of Tennessee, the residents here that hire a licensed surveyor with a certain expectation. They need to be able to have on record proof that they were familiar with the rules and regulations of Tennessee, to have taken and passed an exam with a passing score, may not be perfect, but a passing score to meet this board's states. And especially with a comedy application of somebody who's from another state, which generally implies that they have less, if maybe have none, experience of actually surveying in Tennessee.
Tim, what's your response to that?
Well, I think one of the thoughts, first off, I want to say, and Jay says everything very eloquently, and what he says is right to a point, and that's kind of where I'm going with this, is for a change, Jay, that's the old school concept. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to get outside the box just a little bit. So, so here's probably the question that I would ask now is risk and reward. You know, what's the risk, and is there a reward for us taking that risk? I've talked with several boards that do regular comedy, and they have not seen a high number of complaints in the comedy applicants that have become licensed. Again, it's sort of full circle. I think that taking a leap similar to Kentucky is truly saying that, hey, the surveyor is professional. You know, the other thing that we face in NCWS is, you know, our engineering side of NCWS is so large compared to the surveying side that the engineering side is greatly frustrated with how difficult it is for surveyors to be mobile from state to state. Mm-hmm. And that's part of where some of this stuff comes from.
Let me ask you a question while you're doing that. So, say it was possible to do comedy without taking the test. How many would you theoretically have in a year? Take advantage of that? 5?
Well, we've had probably
More than half, I'd say.
I would say we've probably
Half of what
had
we get in.
between 60 and 70% over the last 3 years that have been comedy
Really?
applicants in Tennessee.
Wow.
That's about the right percentage.
Most of these gentlemen that were here today were comedy applicants.
Right.
Yes.
It is the majority, yeah.
Yeah.
And of
Okay.
the,
And I asked Andrew Ritter the same question, and his percentage basically was about the same as mine. So most of the states across the United States, jurisdictional boards are seeing about the same numbers. Everybody's wanting to get licensed everywhere else.
Gotcha.
So that is a heavy number. What I will say, and I realize we're not engineers, and it's not their board, but Ms. Roxanne does know that because she sits their board as well, is that in the engineering world, it's much more similar to your attorney world, of where if you get a PE license in Mississippi and you want to come to Tennessee and get a comedy license, you get a comedy license, because the burden is the same on that engineer as it is on you as an attorney. And if you're going to practice in this great state, you better know the laws and rules, because if you don't, somebody's going to zap you, or
Right.
you're going to do something wrong. So it kind of boils down to, in a way, when you look at surveyors across the United States through the eyes of jurisdictional boards, the word that pops out the most to me is trust. And it's a great lack thereof. Because every jurisdictional board clings to their own little application and their own little exam to create a level of trust for themselves to say that, okay, you, Mr. So-and-so, or you, Miss So-and-so, are a surveyor, and you have met our level of trust. And there's no other way to get there unless you do just exactly 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's where I kind of see the issue being. I just, this issue may be just like QBS for Tim Lingerfeld. It may take a while to get someplace.
I like the idea. I mean, there are all, someone's going to screw up, for sure. So someone will screw up, but they probably won't get hired again if they screw up enough.
Well, I mean, just do other things. Look at the numbers Miss Roxanne presented this morning.
Thank you. I was going to point out to our complaints.
55 and above, that was what, almost 60%? Of
Yeah,
our
that's-
total licensees.
It's concerning.
Of the total, that's
Oh, yes.
extremely concerning.
Well, 30-something, 60 and above. I mean,
Yeah, and we want to, some way hold back a little bit about how they get there. I mean, if you think about it, we have made tremendous strides by going electronically with submitting the applications to each one of the members and us moving those forward. And there's not nearly, we're not sitting on April and October like we were before. Actually, it was February and August. Every year in February and August, we approved a whole cart full of applications so that those people could show up and take that exam either in April or in October.
Right.
Well, we're all clean away from that. So we've made light years.
yes, we have.
Unbelievable. Getting everything electronic, the whole 9 yards. We've come a long ways. But I think the next logical step is something of this nature. It may not be as I threw it out there, and we may have to think about it a little bit. But if nothing else, I wanted to get the members thinking about it a little bit, because you're probably going to hear some more about it when you go to NCEES here in a couple of weeks, and it's going to continue. I know I've got to go back to the exam committee meeting in June in Clemson, and one of the things that we're going to be talking about is the strengthening of the PS exam, because that's one of the NCEES topics. Is getting it modularized.
If you phase this in, would you do it? I mean, does the NCEES recommend a way to do it, like a probationary 1-year period?
I'm going to ask the new president, who will be Dean Ringel. I am going to ask him if he will create a task force of jurisdictional board members, surveyors, to study this very ideal. But I'm going to ask him to only select members that are in favor of something of this nature, not the nay side, so we can look at it with a positive direction and not go in a room and constantly bump heads. And I'm hopeful that he will do that. But just as Kentucky has stepped out of the box, I'm hopeful that North Carolina, maybe Tennessee, or whoever else will begin to step out of the box as well, because it's my theory that if we can eliminate a portion of the state-specific exams, while NCEES is strengthening up the rest of the examinations, that we can converge at a point in time, which is probably 3-4 years down the road from here, and then we not even have one. That's kind of where I'm coming from on this. This is early, and I'm sort of pointing towards the goal at the end of the rainbow, and I think we can get there. And it may take a few states of stepping out of the box just a little bit to make it happen. So, again, the three words I'm going to say is risk, reward, and trust. And if you think about this equation in those regards, you might change your philosophy just a little bit. And I'm certainly open to any, I'm not trying to say that what I said was the way, 15 years and clean discipline and a plat. It can be anything. We can be anything. It can be as challenging as a take-home test for the rules and laws. That could be a part of the equation. To try to soothe the pain of where you were coming from. Right. And you're exactly right. But, that's just kind of the way I see this. And when I wrap my arms around it, because the surveying profession needs to go this way for its professional status all across the United States. And I'll be very frank. As an individual surveyor in the state of Tennessee, I hope to see within the next couple of years that our licensing law change back to what it was in 2014, or something very close. I really do. Now that's just a personal statement.
On your trip, this is something you're obviously going to bring up and discuss, so I think that's a great opportunity to hear what other states are looking at. As far as from our perspective, I think, and Jamie can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the comedy applicants are the ones that do struggle a little bit more or get frustrated. Because in their point of view, they've been licensed already. They are working. They've been making a living doing this. They studied, they tested, passed that first exams, and so here we're holding them back from taking off. So it's a difficult point for them who are already in the industry to take a while to
I
be
sometimes
licensed.
wonder if it wouldn't be better for us to review their plat from their state,
Right,
and not
meeting their
and
requirements.
not specifically asked for the exact wording in their certification to match Tennessee's, but to see if what they are actually doing. In other words, give us a better feel for what work product are they doing. For example, just like a gentleman that was here earlier today that was licensed in Alabama, he presented plats by a surveyor here in Tennessee that didn't even cut the mustard the first time he sent them, and we could have filed a complaint on the guy then.
Exactly.
And he ended up doing it twice. And, where I would have felt much more comfortable with this gentleman if he'd have submitted me an Alabama plat.
On something he knows.
On something
He's
that
been
he
doing it.
knew to
I agree.
demonstrate that he did know. And Jay may have felt the same way. But, we're obligated when we review these things to review them by our rules and regulations, and that's what we do. But at the same token, we could very easily review what he had and see if he's basically covering all the bases.
I think in these conversations that we start having, you all have at these meetings, all those things are worth noting, that for those people that are mobile, that is that frustrating piece. The other piece to kind of think about, so right now, we can review these electronically, and I think SharePoint has been working for the three of you. Is that correct? So it's a better, more accessible,
That's better. Yes,
less changing
SharePoint is
password
better.
every day. So we're
Yes.
happy with that. That's good to know. But something to keep in mind is if there's anything that we, maybe myself in the office, can help with that application process to expedite, because right now, as you three are busy in your worlds, we are still sometimes delaying them for the two, approvals or a deferral or whatever. Just something to think about. I don't mind. That's what I do with the engineering applications, with the architect, because you've got the national organization that already reviews the education credentials, the experience. It's all there. What I've had to learn and focus on is smaller. Now, don't get me wrong. Have no clue what those plants look like, what I'm looking or reading, none of that. But just something to think about. Is there any other way in the meantime, until we get to 3 years down the road and have the permanent solution, that we can divide the pieces so that I look at something else, so that we start sending you maybe just the plats and the description, and let me review the rest?
It's just like the NCAAS record.
Mm-hmm.
We see so few of those. To me, they're cumbersome.
Mm-hmm.
Where Kentucky, for example, they made it mandatory. Engineers,
Oh.
surveyors, it's all NCAAS record or nothing.
So the architects are the same way, and their association is very expensive. I'll leave it at that. It is not mandatory for the engineers. However, we highly encourage, and we explain the reason it is so needed. It is rare that I see an engineer without the record because they're so mobile.
Right.
It's not rare that I see one with 33 licenses. That's every week I see one or two like that. So with that said, we are inclined to highly suggest we get the record, and if that piece of the review you all are comfortable with me doing, and you focus on the description and the plats, we could separate what you see to keep me focused on the education, the references, those pieces. It's something to think about, because I'm doing it with the others, and now kind of, because I see them every day, I know what that report looks like.
And that's the only Achilles heel with us, with the
Yeah.
NCAAS record, is just, we just don't see them that often.
Right.
You know.
So we're definitely going to use the same tactic. Is we highly encourage you to get that NCAAS record. It helps you in mobility. It'll help expedite your process with us, and we should start seeing more and more. But maybe by the next meeting, we think about it again and we can discuss it. You know, is it worth, and are there some pieces that I can look at to give what you review only be 3 pages, a plat and 2 pages, the key pieces you need, and we keep everything else in the office, and you're only getting them when everything else is there. Because I'm finding you're looking at a lot of documents that you may not need to waste your time on.
I don't know what Jay would say about this, but what if we were reviewing 1 plat and 1 description as opposed to 2 plats and 2 descriptions?
The only reason we do 2 is because it's been
That's what it
2, and
says.
that's what the rules
It's been-
say.
yeah, it says
That's
it
why
in
it's
there
2.
forever, you know. I mean, I don't know that 2 tells us a bit more than 1 does,
Yeah.
because 9 times out of 10, if it's not on 1, it's not on 2.
Yeah, I mean, if we were to get that rule changed, I'd be comfortable with making that change to 1, but
Yeah.
for now, it's 2, and it's what it is, what it is.
Right.
You know, when I'm reviewing those applications, generally what I'm looking at, the first thing is what category are they applying under, which puts my whole mindset into how am I going to be looking at, number 1, experience, and the education route.
Right.
Those are the 2 things. And, you know, if I see a category 1, I know I'm looking for a BS in surveying, I'm looking for X number of years of experience, and then I'm looking straight at the plats. That's about where I'm at. And when I'm looking at a category 5, now I'm looking for the work experience. I'm trying to count up the years of experience directly toward the surveying, et cetera, et cetera. The things that I'm not looking at so much, although I do view them, is like the references, because generally speaking, for most applications, you're not going to give a reference if it's not going to be positive, right? At least if you're smart in the way you're doing your application, I would think. If there's a reference in there, it's going to be positive. So I'm looking at those just briefly as I'm scrolling by, making sure they're all positive. Occasionally you see one that's not, but it's rare. But honestly, that's what I'm looking at, is the years of work experience based on the category that they're at, the education, and once I'm satisfied with that, that has kind of checked my mental checkbox. Then I'm jumping into the plats and the descriptions and making sure. And by far, the majority of the effort into my review is in the plats and descriptions.
Same thing. And I'm sure Jackie does the same way. You just have to know which path that they're on. And then you'll get that all flushed out really quick.
Yep.
Because I can think of a handful of references over my tenure on this board that have been negative. I had one applicant quite a few years ago because he had 2 out of 3 references at that time, when it was what he had to have, were bad. Basically, they just said he wasn't ready. I mean, you know, and I mean, if the reference says he's not ready, then, you know, I ain't gonna let him test, you know.
Well, and I think on the NCAAS record for the land surveyors, because those paths and ways into the licensure vary from state to state, they're not signing off on this education's good and this experience is good as well, which they do on the engineering piece. You know, they've got the bachelor's, they've got the master's, and so forth. So, but something to think about, because I don't mind doing those pieces, the references and that, which path, because I can do that. And then just limit you all to the plats. It is in the rules that we confirm that you need to look at 2. So it's something to think about, because if 2 is a waste of time, then maybe the next time we look at rules, we reduce it. I think they would appreciate not, you know, then just focusing maybe truly on 1.
Yeah, I mean, for next year's rules, you know, your package, you might want to jot that down, and that'd be something that we look at. Because we probably ought to tweak it to add the actual legal description, because it's not in there, if that's what we want. Maybe by then, maybe we'll know another path on some of this other stuff or whatever. But I think we need to, for me, I'd like to keep this conversation kind of open a little bit, particularly for the comedy and the applications, because I still think we're plowing new ground, as we say up home, and, you know, we ain't got it right just yet, but we're working it, and it's a long way.
I applaud you guys for being forward thinking. You don't see that often in government.
Well, I mean, Miss Roxanne has been the leader in this deal about helping us get paperless and helping us get more efficient.
Oh, for sure.
Everything is so greatly changed since I've been on this board.
They were
And
singing
it's all
your
been-
praises at lunch. You
They're
didn't know
very
that.
sweet. I don't know how much of that's true, but thank you.
It's 100%
It's
true.
a whole team effort. Jamie can vouch. It is the whole
We were all
staff.
applauding.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I love having the idea just open and the communication so we can keep thinking. That sounds great. And I'm glad to hear that SharePoint's working better. I mean, took us a minute to
a
get
lot
there,
better.
but
A lot
we're all
better.
happy with it. Good,
A lot better.
good.
Yep. Yep. Okay, next item is NCAAS CPU registry. Basically, just want to kind of mention this, so if any of the surveyors are watching or whatever, NCAAS has a free service that allows you to send your continuing education into them. And they will send out a report to whomever you tell them to, if you need to. For example, like Jay, if you need to send one to California, for example, they'll send it. And it's got your list of whatever you're feeding it. It's your information. You're feeding it. Whatever you feed it, they'll send it to whomever. So I think that's something that, I should have probably said something to John about it while he was here, but I'll try to remember to do that. It's something that would be a good thing for surveyors to do. I think it'll be a plus as we begin to do audits as well, if surveyors want to choose to use that. It's also another spot to keep your record, and if you lose your certificate or whatever, you've already sent it to them and they got it.
Yep.
So I mean, even if you wanted to chuck it, you could, because they would have it. So I just want to mention that that's a paid political advertisement there, or whatever it is.
Thank you. I think that's great. And we did update our website just, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago. We noticed that there was no quick way to find the link to the NCAAS site through us. And we really wanted, again, our statute doesn't require it. It still costs something to be a member, so we don't want to necessarily push it, at least right now, but we at least wanted that link accessible so people knew quickly how to get it. So it's on the website now.
That's one question on the website. I think I know the answer to it, but I want to verify. Did we pull the form out in the application that was about the firm registrations? Remember, for a while that form was in there. It had really no business being part of the application, but
Yes.
To my knowledge,
I think it was
we did.
pulled.
We pulled it, and we're planning on the renewal to add a line for them to let us know if they're associated with a firm and to list it there, because clearly when they're coming in and brand new, or even through comedy, they may not know that information, and that's where it lives now, so we're going to add it there and then make a decision, but we did pull that form.
Okay, next item is NCAAS Southern Zone meeting in Boise, Idaho. That happens the 16th through the 18th of May, which is a couple weeks away. I think Jay and Jackie and myself are going, and Miss Ashley's going. So that's wonderful. Should be a good meeting. It's a joint meeting with the Western Association. So you're going to meet some new folks, hear some new things. It's about like a half of an annual meeting in a way when two zones meet. So it should be a good meeting. As far as the Southern Zone is concerned, the Southern Zone will elect a president-elect for NCAAS. They'll elect a zone vice president. They'll elect a zone assistant vice president. Secretary-treasurer is every odd year, so they wouldn't come till next year. So that's kind of what's happening in the zone. You'll get a good update on all the committees, where they're at, and a preliminary review of the motions and so forth for the August meeting. So that's pretty much the nuts and bolts of it. Pretty part of the country out there. Look forward to going out there and spend a little time.
Great.
Sorry Jed's not going with us. Maybe when he quits having youngins, he can go
I
for a
know.
while.
Tell you what.
But look forward to that. Okay, well, I guess we're down to application reviews.
I add one item, so your
Yes, ma'am.
applications are on your iPads. There are only two individuals, and I'll go through their names here in a minute. They're on, the separate document is called Applications for Review. Mr. Smith and Kit Vitkus is all you're looking at. Mr. Miller, we've already done, so we'll skip straight to them. The only other piece that I had in my notes and didn't get to yet is we are going to be at the next meeting reviewing some of the paper applications that our folks do fill out that at the bottom have a notary piece to it. Because of technology being what it is, we are hoping to move toward people attesting to the fact that everything they've stated is true and so forth, as opposed to needing a notary stamp. It's just becoming cumbersome, even for us in this building, to have notaries anymore. And so that we're going to review those. It was just that came up too quickly for me to have them ready to present to you. So I would show you the documents and we'd kind of simplify them with Ashley's blessing as to what to say. It's good. Basically, since there's just two board members, I guess you will both have to either agree or defer or deny both the applicants that we have on your iPad. So we'll give you
Right.
plenty of time to. And Jed, not to say, but I think last time we pointed out, if the board doesn't need Jed to stay, given that the applications.
Hey, Jed, you told people to stand up and sit down all day. I just tell you to leave.
I love it. Love it. Love
We've
it.
got the two we need, so I just thought I'd bring it up.
My favorite type of bossing around when I
With
get to
friends like
leave.
us, you don't need enemies.
I
do you?
tell you what. I tell you what. Y'all guys enjoyed your rigorous application reviewing.
Oh, it's one of our things. Hey, great to see you.
You guys too.
Y'all staying another day or two in Nashville so the little ones can play?
Oh man, I got a trial in the morning.
Oh, okay, that ain't no good.
Enjoy that.
Always something, right?
Yep.
Thank you, Jed.
Thanks,
So
Jed.
Thank you,
much.
Jed. Have a good day, buddy. See you next round.
If you talk to Jackie, give him a hard time about it.
I'm going to. I'm going to do Vic. Attorneys. they fill out an application or a reference sign, because, you know, we require the seal, so we may want to look about that as well. Quirky things.
Yeah. Starts on page 67 to the very end. Yeah, they're not. Oh, it's that application document. I don't think it's the iPad. Because I'll. Look at the bottom. You can tell at the bottom if there's a plant. You got your one done?
Well, I would have if I had to play it.
Are you missing the plat on Smith as well?
Jay's looking at.
You split them. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we sort of split them so we
Good.
could move along a little better.
Perfect. She'll print them. I don't know why the document was what it was.
All right, so the BS plus.
Oh, because the ones we use at UT Martin, they're, all of those are.
Oh, yeah, when I was zooming in, it starts
Yeah.
jumping, yeah.
Yeah, it goes
I had
crazy.
that issue too, yeah.
Something like that, when you zoom in on them flat, you try to zoom in and it just makes it choppy. You can't read nothing. Yeah. These plats on this is terrible. I'm sorry. No disrespect to y'all, but they're super hard to read.
So when I blow it up, it just.
Like right here, like right here, I'm trying to read those notes, watch what happens. See, nothing. I can't read that. I need to read that.
So we need to think about when we defer.
Well, see, that's what I do in my office. Jay probably does the same thing. I print the plat so I can look at it and then I can go through it so much
This is
faster.
an ideal situation where we're reviewing and discussing.
Yeah. See,
But that's the problem, see, because
I know.
we don't have the machines to blow it up.
we need a magnifying
Like
glass.
17s or something.
Right,
bigger.
so that, then you've got the same.
I don't know if is it a software issue that we can't view the plat, or is it the PDF file that's provided? Some plats, most plats, I don't have an issue with. I can zoom right in, look at it, it's all great. this one in particular for some reason.
I think something, yeah. Have you before been able to?
I think that the plat should be submitted to you.
See, I just blew it up
in a-
cautiously.
Point, I did
know,
the same thing, because you
I know.
just do it and then just,
Yes.
you can only get so
I get
far.
what you're
then-
saying.
Look, look here.
There it is,
See?
right there.
I get what you're
Yeah,
saying.
zoom back down and pop right in, and then just a little
Yeah.
bit, yeah.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
That's not a
We're just not
huge.
going to be able to enlarge them either, so
Yeah.
we're still.
Well, if this was submitted to you in a PDF format at an 18 by 24 size, and you just, but if you all have to scan it
No, we don't.
to
We
put
don't.
it in here,
I mean, they're not mailing it in.
They
They provide the PDF, don't they?
Yeah. On the internet, through email.
like I say, I mean, I take this in my office and print it, and then I can say, I can go through, I can look at that plat 2 minutes. And I'd say Jay's probably the same thing. And check it off and know exactly what I got.
That's the one that came.
But here, it's a battle. I go a dab more,
You've
I've lost it.
Yep, yep. Come and take mine, because it's obviously not one iPad or the other.
Not the machine. All right, so let's get back on this guy's,
Bless you, bless you, bless you. You know, planning,
Pardon me.
photography. Basically, anything 300 up, we're gonna pretty well get.
route surveying lab, we're 300s.
Right.
All right, 300 and above,
Yeah.
seminar general.
I have a pet peeve about surveyors need to sign the maps. I think we should ever even see the application unless the maps are signed.
That's something that Jamie and I can make sure, so they won't be forwarded to you without a signature. That makes sense to me. Okay.
It's kind of a pet peeve, but I mean, that's what it has to be. Did you see this? Hey, read that. That's what I said.
What?
Yeah, beer bottle typical. Somebody marked the line with beer bottles.
Never heard of that one.
Yeah.
Wow.
And a legend, beer bottle line.
If that line wasn't straight, I'd be thinking he's drinking the beer bottles and setting them down.
Mr. Victor's problem is that the last 4 years, I'm not going to review his plats or anything else.
No, if the experience isn't counting, there's nothing else to review. Now, if the plats, if you're looking at them and something obvious is there that we can help him on so he doesn't come back one more time, but.
First thing's
no.
the signature, because it's not on there. I mean,
Yeah.
Again, that's one that, it's a quirk. For me, I would have not sent it to me.
And we can take care of that. Those don't need to go to you until they're complete.
Of course, it doesn't say that he did the work either, you know. You know, if a person is unlicensed, the plat and the legal description should be certified by the licensee to say that they did the work.
On the plats for Mr. Cody Vidkus, that doesn't have a signature, is there anything else we need to point him to so that when he comes back, he can try to have everything else and not be delayed?
Well, it's a plat by his employer, and it doesn't say that he did the work anywhere.
That can be an item that we point out as well, correct? We sort of had that with Mr. Craig, I
The
believe.
plat was even drawn by somebody else and checked by somebody else and approved by somebody else, and it says, basically it says he had nothing to do with it. I mean, that's just from, you know, what he has said here. You know, at least they could have done is put it in there that he drew the plat or something. I mean, you know, they didn't even try.
It was potential.
So I'm going to guess Mr. Caleb Smith is approved? All right, both approved. And then we have the details to provide Mr. Cody Vidkus with what he is pending so he can.
And as support to that, Ms. Roxanne.
Yes.
There is a letter in here from his former employer that stipulates exactly what I said. The letter says, let me find it here. TV went off. He'll be back in a minute. I just can't remember having this much trouble with these things.
I don't know that the loaded documents before have given us, but I noticed that these did, because they did on my laptop. I was hoping when I deleted and moved Mr. Craig out that it was going to be fixed. So I'm hoping it's a one-time thing.
I'll go with that. I'm
Thank
good.
you. I appreciate the vote of confidence.
If anybody knows about technological difficulties, it's me. So I'm certainly not going to jump on somebody else because they have trouble too.
We appreciate it.
I'm trying to get it. I'm going to go real slow. Wouldn't work under a smarter RLS than Billy Evans, but Billy Evans hadn't been licensed in I don't know how many years.
Well, if on him we've got a good description of what else he needs to correct and make right, I think the more we give him, if we're deferring him, the better, hopefully.
I'm denying him because he don't have the experience.
Oh, the experience, that's right, he was missing the
Yeah.
experience. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
That seems-
I don't see a lot of use in working on the plats and.
No, then you're absolutely right. So we're in good shape with him if we've got both decided. I think the only other thing, Tim, is you had an email at the last minute that you sent me that I printed for you that you wanted to discuss. Board dealing with something?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Invisalign. The only thing I wanted to say about Invisalign, and I think Jay may agree with me, is currently there is a Supreme Court case with the Mississippi Board on Invisalign, and to my knowledge, it's not been resolved. I plan on asking the Mississippi folks when I see them in Boise. So I don't think that we should take any action of any nature at this point in time. That's my opinion, and Jay may differ. Because I think we need to find out what's going on before we get on the boat, one way or the other.
And you scroll to page 80. If you tap it at the bottom, you'll get all the little pages. That tends to be a faster way to get to the one you need, and then it will just circle until it finds it. Ashley was able to jump forward and says it's on page 80.
Yeah. No, I read it. That was kind of the first alert. I was looking at that, but that was kind of the first alert because, I mean, that's a former employer. He's a licensee, and he has made a truthful statement, and the applicant verified the truthful statement. And I'm not saying that the applicant is not capable of doing the work or whatever. I'm just saying that he has not done it according to the statute, which the statute says he should have 2 years progressive experience after passing the FS, one of which must be under a licensed professional land surveyor. And he does not have that. He has progressive experience, but he does not have it under a licensed land surveyor because he's working for a construction company.
That will definitely, and that will go ahead and he can continue his reapplication when he's met that requirement, but for now,
It says, in my opinion, that Cody should work under an LS, gaining more experience with boundary surveys before obtaining a license. So, I mean, that's a licensee making that statement, that's not this board. Okay. Let's see what time it is. 1:40. Hey, do we have anything else, Ms. Roxanne?
not a thing, sir. I think I've gone through all my notes, and
Okay.
I'm good.
Before we adjourn, we kind of lost our other member over here. We run him off. We need to do our PDHs, Jay.
Well, let's see, start
Four
at
okay
9.
for you?
4 sounds about right.
So if you'll make a motion,
So moved. 4 PDHs.
I'll second. We'll vote.
Aye.
Aye. We got it. Sort of railroad that one a little bit, but
Good,
you all were present. We have
Yes,
witnesses.
yes.
We have witnesses.
absolutely.
I don't think I've ever claimed them, to be honest with you. But
And I understand. May have to this year. I missed taps altogether this year.
Good point.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn,
So moved.
1:45. Thank you.
45, good meeting. Good meeting. A lot of
Thank you,
comments.
Roxanna and everybody. Great job today.
Yeah.
Very nice work.